Before we begin, Mrs. Monaco, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for someone that most of us knew, a very close, dear friend, Nancy Hofferty. She succumbed to a battle with cancer, and many people will remember her. Many people who might be watching will remember her as Miss Nancy at the rec school program for years, and a town meeting member for years. She was an advocate for children with special needs, and she's just a great, wonderful person. And I would like to express our condolences to her family and friends, and have a moment of silence for a very special person. Thank you.
So first is the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's 4-0-0. And is there anyone here to speak on a matter that is not listed on the agenda tonight? No? All right. So, our student representative, would you please, Rhea, give us your report? Thank you.
Okay. So the prom tickets are now $75. The semi-formal tickets are $15. Mamma Mia's opening night was last Friday, and it was a fantastic show. But they're still playing this weekend, so I suggest everyone go out and support our music department. The peer education program went to MSMS today to talk about stress and stress management to the 7th grade. And also, the annual Ideas Conference was in December. There was a few selected seniors and juniors that had gone to that. They learned about biases that we might have as people and how we should notice our bias and how to do that. They're eager to bring positive change to the BHS community, and they're going to present their proposal next meeting. I would like them to speak a little bit more on the Ideas Conference. That's why I'm not giving a lot of information about it right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hear the seniors heard today
Yep.
that when their last day is.
May 23rd.
Yeah. Was there a big shout of joy that went up? Good.
Well, we'll see. No, yes, that's true.
If there's any snow days, I don't know, but hopefully not.
So, again, Madam Chair, I just have a couple questions, because I came across a phenomenon this weekend, and I just think it was very new to me. I hadn't experienced it before. I know it's that season. Maybe all the adults here have experienced that before, but I have very close friends who live in Ipswich, and their daughter is a senior, and she was asked to the prom, but they call it a promposal now? Is
Yeah.
that what they call it? Could you
Yep.
explain what that is? Because I completely missed that part of childhood.
Okay,
have it
so a
then.
promposal is basically an extravagant way of asking someone to prom, and basically the person asking the other person chooses exactly how extravagant they want to go in their promposal. So some people might just ask someone, oh, do you want to go to prom? But then other people might sing to the person they're asking, like my friend sang to their prom date in front of a lot of people.
Really?
Yeah. And then some people make funny posters with different like jokes, sort of like that.
I bet if you asked Mr. Murphy, you did it in a creative way, I imagine. You were a trendsetter back in the day.
You didn't go, did you?
What's a prom?
So that's a real thing, a
Yeah.
promposal.
But
Is
it's
everyone else aware of
kinda
this and
new.
I missed it? Yes, you're all,
Everyone.
I know, I have to get out of central office, I'm sorry. So that's just, what's been the most creative promposal that you've heard about?
There's a lot of good ones. I don't know.
I saw one on
this
Yellow?
week, like up in Exeter where my kids went to school, where there was a kid like with a road crew and a hat on, and
Yeah.
he like had a detour like thing, and it was like promposal ahead. It was like,
Oh, that's so cute.
that was pretty cool. You can
Yeah.
tell if somebody needs one.
Basically, the response to any promposal is, "That's so cute." So, I just gave you that response.
I'm still learning every day, so
Yeah.
that's just an amazing thing. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
And, I will, that has now entered my vernacular, promposal.
Anyone else have questions for Rhea tonight?
Nice job.
Okay, thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thanks.
So,
We cover the really important topics here at the
Yes.
school committee meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
well, we've covered everything important, right? So, does anyone have any subcommittee reports?
I kind of do, again,
Okay.
and not with the promposal. I
Okay.
just wanted to, so did you speak to Roger about changing the date?
Yeah,
It-
he said the 10th should be not a problem. We're just trying to decide if we're gonna do Lawrence and Strachey on the 3rd or just push everything to the 10th. So I'll know tomorrow night.
So, again, Madam Chair, with your permission, we were just talking, again, at the subcommittee meeting, which is why I'm saying it during subcommittee reports, last night, that the public hearing on April 2nd, we're kind of crunched for time. The reason we held the special meeting on the 2nd is because we were to present to Ways and Means on April 3rd. If we could push the Ways and Means until the 10th, then we could do the public hearing at our regular meeting on April 9th.
Okay.
So, Sharon, that means we have to, it's already been in the paper, but we would have to, cancel that? And then, and we have to do that a week ahead of time? So, again, I just want to, obviously, it's your, we can be ready on the 2nd if we have to be, but I just think we'll have better information if we can wait a few days. And I think that would give more time for questions, and, because I just keep forgetting, April 2nd is next Tuesday, right? So,
Yeah.
so again, with your permission,
Okay.
if we could push that to the regular meeting on the 9th, and then we would cancel the meeting on the 2nd.
Good by
Anyone
me.
have- Anyone
We
else
need a
have
motion for that, or is that?
comments?
I don't think so, I just
It's
wanted
just
to ask your
administrative
permission
thing.
again, and I haven't confirmed, but I'm saying if it's okay with Ways and Means, then we'll be ready to go. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick report. Well, we had a meeting last night with
Oh.
Ways and Means Subcommittee.
Okay. Actually, can I just, at the end of this topic, I just want to clarify that we had scheduled a meeting for next Tuesday, April 2nd, and we had posted it as a public hearing on the budget, but we've just changed that. We're going to now not have a meeting next Tuesday, April 2nd, and we will meet on April 10th as planned, but the public hearing on the budget,
We'll meet on the
9th, I'm
yeah.
sorry, that the public hearing on the budget will be on April 9th, as well as our regularly scheduled school committee meeting on April 9th, right?
Right.
Correct.
Okay, so, more
That was
report from the
part of what I
school
was going
committee.
to say.
Oh,
Tom
okay.
and I attended the subcommittee meeting,
Mm-hmm.
a second meeting with Ways and Means, or third meeting, I can't recall now. And a lot of great input. We want to thank the subcommittee for their thoughts and their time and effort they put into going through the budget, making recommendations. There's a lot of things that are in flux right now, and I think the administration's request that we cancel the April 2nd meeting makes a lot of sense, because we'll have a little more information perhaps about some retirements and some other things that are kind of in flux, and will give us a better opportunity to have a more solid number on April 9th. So I just wanted to thank the subcommittee for their hard work. I know how much work it is. I did it many, many years ago, and your input is invaluable, so thank you.
Any other comments about the Ways and Means Subcommittee? Okay, any other subcommittee reports?
That's an open-ended question.
It is, I was thinking, what could I say?
I moved on pretty fast. Was I not fast enough?
Yeah, you blew it.
Okay. Are there other subcommittee reports? Okay. The Wellness Committee met, which I'm on, and they gave us, Mr. Jacklin gave us a lot of updates. The ESPERT screenings that we've been talking about since last year, that's a screening for potential problems with substance abuses, where the state mandated a couple of years ago that we do screenings in the middle school age and at the high school age, to make sure we're catching concerns that might come up with individual students. And Burlington High School did it last September, and Marshall Simons did it in January. And they actually did something quite clever and efficient, which is that since the nurses are involved in it, they actually did all the screenings. They did the hearing and the vision and the postural as well as the SBIRT screening, so it was a pretty good use of our staff time, I think, and I'm glad to hear that. Somebody smarter than me figured that one out. We don't have the exact data back yet, but I believe that Mr. Jackling thought that it was similar to the high school where there were just a few students that got screened in as concerns. It was kids that were already on the staff's radar. We do have staff who know their students, and it was really good to hear that. So I'm very glad that was the report. He also gave us a report on Wellness Day, and I know we talked about it 2 weeks ago at our meeting, and again, it was done well, and they had 930 students out of 958 enrolled students at the high school who participated, and I think that's a really fabulous showing, and I think that informally, they did do a survey, I don't have a report on that, but the kids seem to appreciate having a day to take a breath and do some different things. I also want to thank all of the teachers. There were about 88% of the teachers were presenting and staffing these workshops that were, outside their regular curriculum, and they were clearly all very engaged with it. I mean, all the staff participated. They helped out in other ways if they didn't present one of the workshops. So I think that's great. I'm really delighted, and I'm not surprised. There's so many, the teachers at our high school have so many skills and strengths and interests that it was really nice to see that. So the Wellness Committee is continuing to work on the YRBS along with our consultant, and they're going to do it in April sometime. So, and we're hoping, because now it's gotten much more computerized, so we're going to get the results back a lot sooner than we used to get them back, so that'll be good. They're also planning to do the 5th grade puberty classes in May like they did last year, and it went real well last year, so we're hoping it'll go well this year. The Wellness Committee's trying to pick a date for Parent University so we can let people know way in advance and see if that helps with people being able to plan to come. They had picked a date and then there was a conflict, so it's still up in the air. And there also some discussion about doing some surveying and questioning this spring to follow up on the later start time at the high school. And I'm particularly interested in knowing, what have we found? There's certain things that probably won't be different. I did know at the last Wellness Committee, the first quarter of the year, the tardies at the high school had been cut in half. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. So they're going to do some more gathering of information after third quarter. And then hopefully we'll be getting that feedback. So that's the report from the Wellness Committee. And if no one else has questions or other committees, then we'll move on to the Ways and Means Committee. Do you have something that you'd like to bring up at this point? Okay. Yeah, okay, it already got discussed, okay. So the next topic is the DECA program, which I've read some of the reports and it sounds wonderful, so.
Yeah, and I do have 2 other quick things, if you don't mind, after this.
Okay.
But again, it's on our district website now, and the students who were the big winners are actually the picture on our district Facebook page. But just wanted to share this from Miss Anderson, Krista Anderson, and Danielle Truve. They're going to be bringing 11 students to Orlando in April for Decker's International Competition and Leadership Development Conference. And this is a result of the results from the 50 members that went to the state competition March 7th through 9th in Boston. During the conference, students were evaluated on both business knowledge test, their ability to creatively and coherently, if I can talk coherently, present a business solution to a judge. Burlington High School students were recognized quite a few times in front of the 2,000-plus student competitors at states. Those students who won recognition include Haley Bourgeois and Victor Cruz, who were third on their test and fifth place overall on their marketing paper about fellow student Allison Pinkham's Scrunched Up business. Connor Collins and Maggie Forbush were sixth place overall on their marketing paper about Yogi Bo. Josh Coughlin was fifth place in the retail merchandising category. Liam Brown was seventh place overall in retail merchandising. Kara Martin had a second place medal for both role plays that she participated in and a second place overall in the hotel and lodging management. Jesse Goober was eighth place in entrepreneurship. Savni Sarokar was ninth place in human resources. Colleen McMacken was fifth place in automotive service marketing. Michael Winters was fourth place overall in his quick serve marketing and had a second place medal on his role play. And Carly Budakian was third place in the medal for her role play. So again, we have, I think the total was 11 students heading to Orlando, and I think you'll see an out-of-state travel request for that very soon, but we want to congratulate Mrs. Anderson, Ms. Truve, and all those students that participated. It was a record number for us going to the state competition. And if, I just want to mention two other things quickly. I know Mr. Sullivan emailed all the parents at the high school of grade 10 students, but I don't think we've had a network outage all year long. And of course, we had one today, which was also the first day for MCAS testing at the high school. So the good news was it went down 10 minutes before we started, not 10 minutes after we started. And this was due to a power surge. Again, this was not a network issue at Burlington Public Schools. There was a power surge, and Bob can fill in the blanks if I don't know what I'm talking about, because he could articulate the technology problems better. But again, Jose and Eric and the team down there, Tom worked hard, get things back up and running. Kids were patient. We got up and running we started just before 10. We were supposed to start at 9 o'clock. But all the kids finished MCAS without a problem. But Mr. Sullivan did send an email out to parents just to let them know that there was that little bit of glitch. But we got the kids up and walking around, made sure we had plenty of snacks on hand, and I think it went on without a hitch once we got started a little bit late. So tomorrow will be day 2 of MCAS testing here, and we're not expecting any issues with power. And the last thing I just wanted to mention was, I know Ms. Simon was able to go as well, but last Friday we had a group of high school students that were accompanied by Mrs. Janovitz and Mrs. Crossman that went over to the Islamic Center. There was a show of community support as the members there entered the mosque for their Friday worship, based on what happened in New Zealand the Friday before, just to show community support for these folks with various religions from around Burlington and a number of townspeople. And again, I think we had about 20 students. Myself, Mrs. Simon was there, and again, Mrs. Janovitz and Mrs. Crossman, and it was nice to be able to go and show the support, and the appreciation for the members there was very, very apparent, so it was nice to be a part of that. And thanks to Mr. Kuna, who was able to get us a bus at the last minute to make sure we didn't have to worry about kids driving over there, so.
Okay. So is there anything under communication tonight? Or that was the communication? Okay, that was the communication, okay. So under old business, we have the BHS Planning for Success, second reading.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Principal Sullivan presented his Planning for Success prior to his budget last meeting as a first reading. Again, the Planning for Success is the school improvement plan that we are required to do annually by state regulations. So I would respectfully request that you approve the high school Planning for Success document on a second reading this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstain? 400. And thank you, Mr. Sullivan, for the work that you and your staff put into thinking about these issues and following up on these ideas that are important to us. So, All right, and now we'll move on to the new business with the new Planning for Success. And Ms. Clark, would you come up and give us your BECC report? Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So jumping a little bit ahead, maybe to a budget issue, we don't anticipate any new staffing needs or any new classroom needs. What we have right now is sufficient for what we have in terms of our neighborhood students who have applied and also for our students who we get projections from early intervention. So based on what we can decipher from their projections, we don't anticipate needing any new classrooms or staffing. So all these are made based on that. But one thing we are going to be changing next year is currently we have 2 full-day partial inclusion classrooms based on student need. Next year we will not need 2, we'll only need 1. So we're going to take that classroom and make a second pre-K classroom in the preschool. Right now we only have 1 pre-K classroom, the rest of our classrooms are multi-age. So just the need of the student, the populations that we have, we looked and said that this would be a nice opportunity to have a second pre-K classroom. I think a lot of parents will be happy because it's high commodity down there. So the letters went out yesterday to our neighborhood students, so parents will be finding out soon about that. So we're really excited to be starting that. We'll be looking at staffing. I'll be talking to my staff about who is interested in that and who is interested in other classrooms as well. So that's one thing that we'll be establishing next year. Also, we'll be looking at the curriculum for that. Right now we use the OWL curriculum, and there are 2 curriculums. There's an older one and a newer one. The newer one is a little bit more advanced, so for our pre-K class, we already have one that we can use, and we're gonna look and see if we're gonna be using 2 of those, or if we'll have to adjust. So that's something that we'll be adding for next year.
So Deb, for the Ways and Means Subcommittee, again, this is Deborah Clark, who's our Director of the Burlington Early Childhood Center. So that's all right. Deb's been, was a phenomenal speech pathologist for us at Francis Wyman before taking over the directorship of the Early Childhood Center. So she's been in Burlington, and again, speech pathology and her other talents have just been a great match and a great fit to the Early Childhood Center. People may not realize this, but we start educating students at age 3. So when they are identified and we take them to age 5 by a certain date, and that's when they start kindergarten for us at the school. So go ahead.
Yep. So when the students turn 3, the neighborhood students can start at age 3. We have students transitioning in from early intervention as they turn 3. So if a student turns 3 and is found eligible for special education on June 1st, we take them on June 1st. So we can get students from September all the way until the end of June for that. Another part of the school improvement plan is last year we piloted the PELI, which is the baby dibbles, which is a literacy measurement. We did it with our one class of 3 and 4-year-olds, and then we did it with our 4 and 5-year-olds, and we found that it was a little too much for our younger ones, so we're using it with our older students. This year we're using it with all of our 4 and 5-year-old students, and we're using that data obviously for progress monitoring to see how they're doing. We can share that with the elementary schools once they go in, and they can compare the data. They can look at that as they're starting their dibbles in kindergarten, but also it's helping us to shape what do we need to do. Where are some of our strengths? Where are some of our weaknesses? What are some things that we need to beef up in our curriculum? So we're using that this year as well. And then just another part of the engaged learning is with the dyslexia screening that's coming up. The state is mandating that there is some type of dyslexia screening at an earlier age. We don't have anything from the state right now as to what to do, but we are expanding or exploring our options to see what is out there, what needs to be. Mary Hood, our special ed director, sent me a webinar the other day, just what do we need to start doing? So when the state comes down with their definition of what we need to do, we'll have a better idea of what we're doing. I think the PELI helps us a little bit, but there are some aspects to it that don't identify dyslexia early enough. So that's another thing that we'll be looking for next year. Another thing that we'll be continuing to do is to increase teacher capacity and student support in the area of social emotional learning. I think I say this every year. That's one area that we really need to continue to improve on as we're having more and more students who have some social emotional dysregulation or some anxiety type difficulties. I think we're getting a lot of referrals from area preschools for students who are suffering from some of those, behaviors or some anxiety, and we just need to continue our learning in that area, and we need to continue working on that area with all of our students. And that goes obviously pre-K all through high school, but we are trying to really continue to work on that. We have a social worker who comes two mornings a week to work with some of our students. Myself and our team chair, Andrea Hayes, we go out to area preschools and we try to give them some of our information. We've shared with them our visuals that we use. We've given them suggestions. We've invited them to come visit us as well. And we've had some, Mount Hope has come to visit us, and some other preschools have come to visit. So we try to keep that open door policy for that. Another thing that we're going to be doing is our Communities United is our Head Start, and they have talked about having some summer programming for us in Burlington, and maybe for kids who haven't been to kindergarten yet and just need some kind of an experience before they go to kindergarten. So we're working with them to see what their availability is, where they're, what they can do for the summer. They've already done some programs at the Burlington Public Library for some math, some STEM, and some literacy events, and it's been a great resource for them. So they're kind of in flux with some of their staffing, but they would like to get in touch with us to work on some stuff for the summer. So that would be a really good opportunity. Where am I? The cultural competence. One of the things all of our teachers do at the beginning of the year, we have a friends and family unit, family traditions unit. We send home, what do you celebrate? It's like on our form of just, obviously allergies, all of those things, but what do you celebrate? So we know what our students are celebrating, what we need to, pay attention to, and things like that. We always want to make sure that our calendar is up to date and that we're not, booking anything on a day that might be something. So we're always trying to pay attention to that. And we're looking at our books, and if any of our books or our curriculum materials don't fall in line with something, we're making sure that those are constantly being reviewed. We're continuing working with the BHS students. The high school students will come down sometimes during a study. We'll continue that. And last year, they had the internship program. We had 2 interns last year. This year, we have 3 interns who will be starting next week, which is great. They're very excited. Our teachers are very excited. So we want to keep going with that. We've had a really nice relationship with the high school. Nicole and I have talked about the electronic payment system. So we're still exploring that. We hope to have electronic payment for our tuition-paying students. Our neighborhood students do pay tuition. So right now, Sandy, our secretary, takes all the checks, and it's a tedious job, so we would like to do it for parent convenience as well as for our convenience to do that. So we'll be looking into that. I jumped ahead to the consultation. The common planning time, we're really fortunate that we have common planning time at the preschools on Friday afternoons. The teachers can all get together. It's been great for them to sit and, like teachers, can plan with each other. We also continue to have therapist meetings on 2 afternoons, so all of our speech pathologists, OTs, PTs, behaviorists, we can all get together, and if a teacher is having difficulty with one aspect or wants to discuss how can they help a student, we're able to do that and plan for that. And it's been a really nice opportunity to have that common planning time in those times to sit and problem solve, or how can we do things better, or how can we look at things differently. So we're going to be continuing with that. Other partnerships that we're working with, we're going to continue to work with the New England Center for Children. They have a wonderful program called ACE. It's a curriculum for students with autism, and it really streamlines and can tailor student learning to where students are. There's a core assessment. Students sign up, and we have certain students on it. We can test their skills, and we can program specifically for them. So we're going to continue with that. We also have one of their specialists come out. She works with the DSC, but she comes out to see our programs as well and to see how are we programming, are there any changes that we need to make, are there any things that we can do within the day that would help our students access the curriculum in a much more effective way. I mentioned the Communities United, which is our Head Start, and then next year what we would like to do is develop some consultative relationships with some AAC specialists, so that's augmentative and alternative communication, for our students who are nonverbal or who might need a device or who might need extra work in that. It's one area, it's an area within speech-language pathology, but it's also a specialized area, and it takes a lot of time and planning, and it's just nice to have somebody else to come in and take a different look at how you're doing things, especially with the more and more students that we're getting who are nonverbal or have limited verbal output. So that's what will be something that we'll be looking for next year. And then in terms of safety, we just, after we had our last professional development, I met with all my staff and we just talked about what can we be doing better, what can we be doing differently. One of the things was we're going to have a short meeting once a month on a Friday just to refresh and remind ourselves, what are we doing, what is our policy, just to keep that fresh instead of, a couple of times a year, once a month, we thought would be good. We're purchasing walkie-talkies for each classroom. We had the high school PA system, so we hear that, and we're working on getting that a little bit louder. But in terms of each classroom, we have several walkie-talkies now, but we're going to get one for each classroom, and that's something that came out of that meeting, just something that we can improve upon. And then I've been meeting with Bob, just talking about some things that we can do within the preschool, just for doors and things like that. Continue those meetings and just continually evaluate what we can and can't do in the preschool, and just remind ourselves of some of those things. So I don't know if I was talked too fast, but that's our plan.
Again, just through the chair, Deb is also I think we started 4 or 5 years ago, and again, Deb was a big part of that. We do try to work collaboratively with the other early childhood providers in our area, in our community. We've hosted, again now for the fourth or fifth time,
Fourth year,
time,
yeah.
we have an early childhood conference that Burlington hosts for the early childhood commissioner. So the schools are divided in Massachusetts into 3 areas. There's an early childhood commissioner, that's Commissioner Weber. There's a K-12 commissioner, Commissioner Riley, and then there's a higher ed chancellor. So so I think this is the 4th year. We have over 400 attendees typically.
I think it's up to 500 or 600.
500 or 600,
Yeah.
where they have to earn.
There's not a lot of free opportunities for early childhood educators. This is not just preschools, it's daycares, it's home providers, things like that. So the state runs this. It's a free PD all day. They get their continuing education credits. It's really nice. You have a bright, sunny day, and you have almost 500 people there, which is really, really nice. Sometimes when things are free, you sign up, and it's a nice day. You might not. But it's very, very well attended. And so public school people I've presented, daycare centers will present, colleges will come. It's a really nice day of learning and sharing. The sessions are about 2 hours each. There's some in the morning and some in the afternoon. So it's been a great
Again,
resource.
Yeah, and plus tremendous credit to our programming, our staff who again do some of the presenting. And again, I think that Burlington hosts is something that is also a tribute to our programming. So I just wanted to highlight that. So Deb, thank you very much.
Any questions or anything I can clarify?
And more just a comment. Thank you for that excellent summary and report. Do we have the capacity right now to handle all of the people who want to place their children in the program?
No.
How big is the waiting list?
Right now, it depends on programs, because you have morning programs and afternoon programs. Most people do want the morning program. It's a little bit longer, and it fits into some people's schedules better. I would say right now on our morning, because there's a couple lists and there's duplicates, I'd say right now we probably have about 20 or 25 on a morning wait list. We were able to get almost everybody in that applied, at least in the afternoon. So they might not have gotten their first, second, or third choice, but they are in the program somehow. But our morning programs are usually the ones that are in demand, and there is a wait list for the morning programs.
Thank you.
I want to also thank you for all of what you do for the kids here, and also it's just so remarkable to me that our early childhood center is helping to consult with and train and share knowledge with all the preschools, because preschools are not standardized the way that public schools are generally, and we have incredible, not only trained and certified, but really good staff in your program, and those skills and knowledge is being shared throughout Burlington, and of course with the conference even more shared. Is it regional or is it statewide, the conference?
It's regional. I mean, it can be statewide, but it's mostly the eastern region. And that was one of the things they had talked about. They'd like to get one going in the western part of the state, just for easy.
I did have a couple of questions about your plan, and well, some are statements. With the Pelley screening of literacy for 4 and 5-year-olds, I'm really glad to hear that it's not going to be done with the 3-year-olds. I feel like there's way too much emphasis on things like whether a 3-year-old can read or not. And I understand they're looking at more specific skills than that, but there are countries in this world that don't even teach reading until kids are 6 or 7 years old. So yes, there's lots of kids who start reading at 3 and 4 and 5, and that's great. But there's nothing wrong with kids who don't. And for us to be spending such focus and time and energy on screening 4 and 5-year-olds, I'm not sure I see the advantage or benefit. It's a state mandate, so we have to do it, but I just felt like I wanted to say that. And I was going to ask about it, but I'm glad to hear you, when you tried it with the 3-year-olds, it wasn't effective. It wasn't.
And some of the questions, even for the 4-year-olds, you're like, oh gosh, they're never going to get this. And then, second time around, they've got it. So
Yeah.
some of the things you're like, okay, this is appropriate. No, but I would agree. I think sometimes we do look at that, like they can't read out of preschool. And, preschool is like, they need to play, they need to build those social relationships, they need to learn how to be people, because in life, if, we might not be reading at a certain level or having math skills at a certain level, but if we can't communicate with each other, share with each other, have that social interaction, that's a bigger issue for everybody. So that's the biggest thing, so.
And then under the goal 1B, the social emotional learning indicators of success, you mentioned you'll continue to support the students and families, and I'm just wondering if you could give us some examples of the ways that you reach out to the families and do that.
Yes, I probably can't give every way because there's certain,
No, just a couple of
so our social
examples.
worker has reached out to some families to give them some community resources that they might need. We've reached out to find, so if the students are with us for part of the day, they might still need daycare afterwards. We've reached out to different centers, even the Burlington After School Program and the Y program, to see if there are spots. We've reached out to some people, Communities United, which is our Head Start. They do have a voucher program, so they can accept vouchers from the state. We've reached out to them to say, we have a student who might need a voucher, who might need that. So we have done things like that for families. We've tried to.
When you first, part of the relationship with the Early Childhood Center, does that involve a home visit as well?
So that's one of the first things we do when we get the early intervention referral. Part of it is a transition planning conference or a home visit. So our team chairperson, Andrea Hayes, will go out. She'll meet with the family. Hopefully the student is there so she can meet the student too. Talking about, where the student was, where did they come from, how much progress had they made, what are their needs, and then we talk about what our programming does. We talk about how the special education process goes, that there's an eligibility meeting. There might be an outcome for special education, there might not be, because early intervention does have different criteria than we have. And we look at families too and see, if they're ELL students, it's not a disability, so that's a lot of talk too, just because it's a different language, and we want to make sure that we're not mislabeling anybody with a disability just because they haven't learned English yet. So that's a big piece that we do, and some outreach that we do with early intervention as well. So we do a lot of outreach that way.
Thank you. Under the relationships with cultural competence, I'm glad to see that you're trying to pay attention to when the holidays are and make sure there aren't conflicts with that. And you partially answered my questions. You say you review the books and look at what that's going on, and I'm wondering what kind of an approach you take to the curriculum, because traditionally, little kids, preschools, kindergartners are doing all the holidays, and it's not necessarily school.
Yeah, so we don't.
And it's exciting, and the teachers are excited, and it's engaging, but it may be exclusive if it's focused on holidays that kids in the classroom aren't celebrating, and I'm just wondering
So
how you look at the curriculum.
we don't do the holidays down there.
Okay.
What we do is a family unit to introduce everybody, and not all about me unit. So they talk about their family. So we talk about what does your family look like, and they share that. Come December, I know it's tricky because there are a lot of things and kids are talking about everything. So something that we do to bring them all together is we do a gingerbread unit, because it's not that we can eat it, but we can make gingerbread houses. We can talk about gingerbread men, and it's something that it's festive. and it's a fun thing for them, and, they read the story. So that's something that we try to do to bring people together. But we don't do the holidays. We do Valentine's Day. That seems like a pretty, they just bring something in and just drop something in a bag or on somebody's desk. But we're not doing any food celebrations, just with the food allergy policy. There's so little too that they don't understand. They're still working on sharing, and you can't have someone else's snack and things like that. So, that's tricky as well. So you're working on a lot of different things. So we do try to minimize the holidays. It gets a little tricky when students don't celebrate birthdays. So we kind of work on that, and how can we still, honor someone's birthday but not celebrate it in a classroom where somebody doesn't. So we kind of handle those on a case-by-case basis when that arises. It's a tricky balance, because you want to make sure that you're including everybody and you're not excluding anybody, and you want to make that balance. And they're little.
Since you brought up Valentine's Day, I also have a real hard time with people who talk to preschoolers about boyfriends and girlfriends and who they love, and I hope that it's about,
it's
I
more
hope
friends.
it's about
We're all
friends.
friends. And the thing is, if you're bringing them in, you bring them in for everybody, or you don't bring them in at all. It's one of those things, but we're just friends.
So it's about friends and
No, there's no
caring.
boyfriends and girlfriends. We
All
don't
right.
want to start that.
That's good, because you hear that I hear that way too often. Okay. So you answered my question about what Communities United is. So is that a preschool somewhere that's not without?
Communities United is probably the umbrella term for it.
Okay.
Creative Start is the one that is a Burlington feeder, that's in Woburn.
Okay. All right. So there's students from Burlington
There are students from Burlington who go there,
the
yes.
Woburn site, okay. And you answered my question about the New England Center, and you described what augmentative and
Augmentative and alternative
communication, which is great, because obviously there needs to be ways for kids who don't communicate to learn to start communicating.
Yeah,
And
so we
sometimes they
look-
don't
yeah.
have language.
Well, there's always some kind of communication intent. They might not know what they're trying to communicate, but they're going to get what their wants and needs are by one way or the other. That could be pointing, that could be crying, that could be looking at something. So it could be sign language, it could be a visual of a picture exchange, or it could be a device that the students use. So looking at that total communication approach.
Do you find that you're able to cross over for kids who are ELL students sometimes to share, even if they don't necessarily have a communication board, but the kinds of things they're using can be shared?
Yeah, so I think the nature of the preschool lends itself to that,
Yeah.
because we have so many visuals. Everything is a picture. We have our picture schedule. So you can go in any classroom down there and you look and see what is happening, first, then, and last. We have first then boards. First you do this, then you do this. There are a lot of visual supports just in preschool in general. And that does help the ELL. The OWLS curriculum that we have also does a lot of multiple reads of books and vocabulary work, and that's really good for that literacy piece too for ELL learners. That just helps with that.
Good. And then my last question is maybe for Dr. Conti or Mr. Cuna, but in terms of you folks needing more walkie-talkies, is that related to the walkie-talkie system that we're getting put together with the town and the police department?
No. Oh.
Okay.
Maybe. So, yes and no. Ms. Clark is looking for a more expansive one for her unit. What we've priced in the warrant article is more for locational in the building. So as an administrator, I believe one would be placed down there, but one that would be more for, like I said,
see.
administrative communication as opposed to like interdepartment communication.
So
So if they go out to the playground.
So the warrant article is for system-wide, and what you're looking for is to have every teacher or classroom have something? Okay. Thank you.
Right. Well, I just want to apologize for walking in late, and thank you. And coming here, my 7th grader is told that the peer group came to the middle school today, and one of the students, actually a number of students, said that their favorite class is the class that they go down, work with the preschool students.
Nice.
So, I appreciate that, and I appreciate the the bringing together of ages in this, being in this building, and lends that, and it's just great to have high school students appreciate you know, the younger students, and I'm sure the younger students appreciate having the big kids in too.
They do.
So, you know, to you and your staff and the high school teachers that run that program, just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
Bring that together. Okay. So,
So this
Have-
is a first reading.
first reading, okay, so this will be on a next agenda for a second reading. Any comments? Any ways and means? Okay. Dr. Conti, are we going to the budget attached or all the,
No, let's get through it, and then we can
Okay.
go do all the budgets, that's
That's fine.
okay?
Mhm.
So Deb, thanks, and we'll.
And you guys are welcome to come down to preschool anytime. The staff is fantastic. It's so nice to have a staff that is so hardworking, and, you know, the little ones take a lot of energy, and they have a lot of energy down there. So anytime you guys want to come by and visit, come on by.
thank you, thank you.
So I'll invite up Carrie Purchase, principal from Marshall Simons, and Josh Murphy, the assistant principal from Marshall Simons. Thanks, guys, for coming out. And again, this is the first reading of Planning for Success document that's in your packet. Just want to thank the two of you for, I'm sure it's been a very busy and year full of learning. So thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great first year, so, good evening. It's a pleasure to be here again. And I will apologize that the draft that may be, if it's not electronic, there may be some typos in the document. So I will apologize right now, so I'll put it out there that we're working on that. So we, adopted or kind of augmented the Planning for Success document that's been in place. It's a 3-year document, although it gets approved every year. So last year, or this year, we kind of continued with the plan that was in place. And at this point, we have really taken all of the learning that we've had this year and started to kind of document some of the work that we'll be doing. I think whenever we look at a school improvement plan or a Planning for Success document, this represents some of the work. It certainly doesn't represent all of the work. So if it's not something that's been kind of in place over time, we're going to continue to implement and support that work, and that it's not exclusive of other things that are happening. So I just wanted to kind of recognize that. So strategic objective 1 is engaged learning. It's a similar format. It's the same format as all of the schools in the district. So under that, we're looking at inclusion for all in targeted instruction. And one of the things that we've been working on since the beginning of the year, and really one of our things that the faculty have identified as a need, was to look at our schedule. And so we've been going through a schedule review process. We had, in February, shared a draft with our entire faculty. We thought we were there, and we then realized that there were some bumps in the road, which was okay. We had the opportunity to go back, and we think we're almost there again. So I don't have a specific schedule to share with you tonight. We're getting closer every day. We know that we're kind of up against the time clock, but we do think that we will have a draft of the schedule ready, one, to go out to our faculty again, then our parent and family community to get their input and feedback. And then finally, once we're there, we'd like to bring it back to you. To share it. So really our goal was to create a master schedule for Marshall Simons Middle School that effectively meets the diverse needs of all learners, allows us to efficiently use available resources, and offers our students a well-balanced curricular program, including allied arts classes, typically known as specials. I think that, that's certainly a big part of middle school, is having those opportunities to explore different areas. As we developed the schedule, and again, the item is really that we're hoping to implement next year, but as we developed, our guiding principles have been consistent instructional time. Right now, on any given day at the middle school, we have 9 different schedules. Instruction time in the core academics can range anywhere from 25 minutes to 75 minutes. So I think that that becomes a real challenge to plan instruction. You kind of end up planning, oh, it's the long day, so we're going to give a test this day. So I think that consistent instructional time is something that we're really hoping for. Reduce the number of pullouts. And by pullouts, we mean right now, for example, our music program is offered in lessons, and they're missing core instruction to get that, or our performance groups are missing potentially core instruction to participate in those programs. So while we're not thinking that we can reduce all or eliminate some of those models, we really wanted to create a schedule that reduced the pullout model, so that students didn't have to choose between perhaps math class one day and chorus one day. We really wanted to maintain programming. Marshall Simons Middle School has a very robust offering in the Allied Arts Department, and that's something that as we engaged in this process, we tried to maintain that, where we weren't saying, kind of just wiping whole programs out. With that said, we only have so much time in the day, so there's, kind of a give to get somewhere. So we think that we struck a balance with the model that we'll be moving forward. We needed a model, and again, this was something that the teachers identified, is having some identified and consistent transition times for students, and then finally increase our lunchtime for students. Right now, currently, the lunch time in Marshall Simons Middle School is 20 minutes, and that does not include transition time. So that's 20 minutes to go, eat, and get back to class. So we really wanted to provide additional time for students there. We talked a little bit about the Allied Arts programming and really wanting to continue to have a wide range of offerings, but also to make sure that the offerings match the 21st century learners. So I'm really looking at transitioning some of our programming to more of a computer science focus, and making sure that that's embedded in it as well. So that's something that when we present the schedule, we'll speak more of, but something that we focused on. And then wanting to be really transparent with families about what the scope and sequence is. For any families that are out there looking at one of those schedules, it's really hard to see, when do they have music, general music? Is it 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade? So we want to be specific with that and really transparent and articulate that going forward. In the area of curriculum, to support students, we are looking at implementing UDL, Universal Design for Learning, and that is a standards-based curriculum framework that holds high expectations for all students while providing very intentional planned choices for different learning styles, for different learners, and giving student choice. It's not something, that you take off the shelf and you start on one day, on day one. It's something that'll take several years to implement and to support teachers with, kind of redesigning some of our curricular areas around that. So there's been a lot of enthusiasm around this from our faculty in terms of everyone kind of speaking the same language and using that framework. So we're excited to continue that work. We also have social studies and science new frameworks from the state. So that is work that will take time. Again, we don't want to rush into it. We want to take our time. We want to unpack those standards and really start to plan curriculum and know that that's going to take a couple years. We also know that we're stuck in the middle, literally, where we're in, we have the K-5 piece, and then we also have the 9-12 piece. So we need to make sure the work that we do at the middle school fits into that picture as well. Been really pleased with some of the work that we've been doing with social studies thus far, K-12. So we're excited to continue that work for next year. In terms of inclusion in our special education programming, been working closely with Mrs. Hood around special education programming at the middle school, and are really excited about making some adjustments to our programming and then some changes going forward. So some of the adjustments will be just in the way that we schedule students in that master schedule, just some grouping things, continuing to follow the service delivery. So for many folks, it's not going to be a change or a change. We're always, looking and hoping to educate our students in the least restrictive way possible and keep them in the community as much as possible. And that means, sometimes different students need different things, and we need to make sure that our programming matches that. So we're looking at implementing a newly established language-based learning disability program. That is something that we have in name right now, but is something that we feel that we could make more of a team-based model, and we can talk a little bit more about that with Ms. Hood. But I think that there's some, again, real excitement and need for that. We're also looking to restructure our life skills program to include more coordinated services and make it more of a cohesive classroom model. And then finally, we're developing a program to support the needs of autism, students with autism, excuse me. I think that this is a population, listening to Ms. Clark, that this is a population that continues to grow in our community. And we need to make sure that our supports for students with autism are growing. There's no two students that are alike, and we need to make sure that we're able to really support their individual needs. Finally, in the area of social emotional learning, again, Burlington is very fortunate to have a number of resources in this area, and using the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which we will be administering on Friday, our plan is to use that along with a review of our guidance program, health, wellness, and look at all of the great things that are happening, and see if it's coordinated, see if there are gaps or overlaps. And I think that that'll be something that we'll, continue to do, but something that we're going to focus on next year, because I think there's a lot of great things happening. We just want to make sure that we're filling all of those pieces in. Do you want me to stop there for questions on that, or do you want me to continue?
Sure,
Okay.
we'll do that.
Okay.
Any questions on the first? Ms. Simon?
I'm glad that you're really focusing on developing the new standards for the history and K-12, and I wish you good luck with that. I know that's a huge project to do. And I'm also really glad to hear that it sounds like the process you're using to come up with a new schedule. It's difficult to change a schedule, and everybody has different priorities, but the fact that you started with where the staff had identified issues is very encouraging. So these things sound like things that are either things that were needed or things that can improve and enhance the program at the middle school. So I'm really glad to hear, and I'm glad to hear that everybody's engaged in it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Strategic Objective 2, relationships, focusing on cultural competency, teacher capacity, and community relationships. Cultural competency, it's listed as a strategic initiative, and I think it's really important to recognize that work is never done. I think that we're always ongoing. We're always kind of assessing where we are as individuals, where we are as a school community, and then continuing to grow from there. So that's something that we will continue to do. I think that UDL is, again, a framework that will support this work as well, because it's something that we can use to make sure that as we're looking at curriculum and instruction, that we're making sure that it's culturally relevant as well. And that's definitely something that, with our teachers, that we'll continue to work on and continue to support. In terms of community relationships, and you talked a little bit earlier about the Wellness Day at Burlington High School. And one of the things that we're excited about and kind of going forward is establishing a 21st Learning Conference, to be named something different, not sure, but really take some of that great programming that's happening, like the peer educators coming down, or looking for community partnerships with our local businesses, with other teachers, and kind of building a day of planned intentional experiences that also provide choice and exploration. And so I'm really, I think, as I talk with some of our faculty, and this is something that is really exciting, and really focusing it on a minimum of 3 days throughout the year, where we kind of suspend kind of the regular class and really kind of delve into some different things. So there's a lot of great ideas, so we're very excited about that. And it'll certainly help with some of that community partnership, because if we have the dates, we can reach out to companies and really get folks involved and engaged. So very excited about that. Any questions about the relationship?
Sorry,
Excuse me. Oh,
so
yes.
I know you said you're going to fix this, but under measuring impact, I'm not sure, it says create a program
Yep.
that provides students with a range of experiences that.
Yes. So it's to give them a range of experience, to expose, to expand their thinking, to explore.
So like the
skills,
21st
the
learning,
21st
century
yes.
learning
Yeah.
things. Okay,
Just a
good,
little.
thank
And
you.
I will fix that.
I know you said that, I wasn't gonna,
Yeah,
I just
that's
didn't
okay.
know what it referred to,
Yeah.
okay.
I like Clinton, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Under strategic objective 3, communication. Communication is the foundation of everything we do, whether that's communication with families, with the community, with our faculty. So we are always working on improving that and improving our homeschool partnerships. We have many tools available in the district, and there's not necessarily a consistent way that we're using those tools. So we're really hoping that we'll be able to, I don't want to say streamline, but kind of identify what our communication plan is, so that families know what to expect, and the ways that we're communicating. I think our teachers are communicating on blogs, and that might not be that's kind of a more of a passive way to go get information, and we need to try to make that more active. So really just coming up with a plan so that those efforts are recognized, because I think the efforts are there. I think that we're also looking at increasing the consistency of use of our electronic grade book. Aspen, which is our student management system, has been in place for many years, and there's a wide range of ways that our faculty uses it to communicate progress with families. And we're hoping to kind of come up with some minimum expectations and kind of so that people know what to expect, so that at any given time or within set periods of time, that information is updated. And so that other faculty members can rely on it, but families can rely on it too, because right now you could log in and it might not be updated, and some teachers might be using it just for grade entry and not using it regularly. So that's something that we're talking about now, and that we'll have in place for next year as well. We hope to develop a program of studies. So the schedule needed to come first, and then the next part will be really kind of providing those course descriptions of not just how often classes meet, but what are we hoping to accomplish in those classes, what are our objectives, so that we can better communicate that to folks. So next year around this time, we'll hopefully have that for you to share. Collaboration is key. That was one of our guiding principles with establishing our schedule, was to maintain collaboration time, which again, we're fortunate to have quite a bit built into our schedule. And we want to continue to do that within our four walls, and that vertical piece. So making sure that we have time to collaborate with our elementary colleagues and then also our high school colleagues, because again, we're in the middle, so we need to make sure that vertical piece is clear. This year we had the opportunity to connect with our 5th grade colleagues to talk about transition and what's worked and what's not, and it was really a great opportunity, and want to expand that not just around the transition parts, but around skills and different facets of development, so that we're better able to support our students. And then finally, the planning for success. This is a 3-year plan that, this is next year will be the last year of the middle school's plan, so making sure that we're going through that process with our school council to identify those goals for next year as well. Any questions in strategic 3?
Ms. Simon?
So you mentioned continuing to hold principal coffee hours, which is great. I'm just wondering if you have alternate times for that type of a chance to sit with the principal, because some parents can't come to a coffee hour in the morning.
So we actually hold it in the evening.
You do?
We
Okay.
serve decaf.
Okay, all right, that's great. But it's just called a coffee hour.
We haven't had as many as frequently as we want, but we do have it in the evening. I'm open to offering them in the morning. I think, kind of doing both to make sure that we're accommodating schedules.
Well, right, so I assumed they were in the morning and
Yeah.
you're doing it, so, but yes, to have different times, because different families have different needs, so
Sure,
that's great.
absolutely. That's great.
And under plan, you mentioned the school council will use the available data, so which school, who is this school council?
So the school councils are, it's represented, we have, currently have 2 teachers, 2
Okay.
family members, and a community member.
Okay,
And we meet monthly. We actually, unfortunately, had to cancel today's meeting, but that's something that we'll do. So we meet regularly.
okay,
Yep.
so that's the standard one, good,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay. And then last, the student safety, always a priority, definitely has been on our radar. We are going to continue to have a safety team. We've met a couple of times this year, but we're going to formalize that process. It's a great opportunity to talk about what's working, what's not, what areas that we need to communicate, and it really gives all of our faculty members an opportunity to have voice in that. So I think it's a really worthwhile time. And then we've also recognized a need through conversations, both after our recent PD and just in general, is that we really need to come up with a way to make sure that the substitutes and people who aren't in our building every day know what our procedures are. And we've already made some changes even since our last PD experience, where we make sure that our subs get a key to be able to lock those doors every time. And then also to continue to develop and implement lessons to support our students. I think it's great that and very common across, the nation to have common language in districts. And I think that the way that, an elementary school might present information might be a little bit different. So continuing to build on language that's used at the lower level, and then continuing to expand that so students feel empowered and know what to do in those situations where In a middle school, you might not always be with an adult all of the time. So what does that look like? So we want to continue to be deliberate with that as well. And I'll just, because we talked about the walkie-talkies, I'll just put that out there, that would be a much-needed addition to our safety and security plan at the middle school.
I actually have a question. I don't know where it best fits with
Okay.
budget or scheduling, because when Mr. Middleton was here, he mentioned adding a point for music or something in that nature. And then it had to do with the schedule, so if,
So I think that we did put a little bit of a placeholder in there, just in case we needed more. I think really what we need is, we need more consistency in our teaching staff in that department. I will say that as we're going through this, we are looking for staffing neutral options, and so when we're looking at our model, we're making sure that we can do it with the staff that we have. There were two small placeholders that we put in. One was in world language, where there may have been a need for a slight increase there, and one was music. I think that if we, instead of looking at it at an increase, I think where we are now with the information we have, we need to have 3 consistent people. So it's, right now we have, kind of a point something of one, a point something of another that totals on that. And we have 4 music teachers in our building on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So they're kind of used more in a K-12 piece as opposed to just the building. So I think if we think about it in terms of having a consistent teaching staff in that department.
okay.
Does that answer your question?
I think so,
Okay.
in relation to setting a new schedule.
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
all right,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. It was a very thorough presentation and well presented, and I thank you for it. I know it's a difficult job to settle into a new place that's been run in one way for a whole bunch of years and try to come in and get acclimated and also make changes. So I'm sure it's been a very busy year for you, and congratulations on what you've accomplished so far, and keep up the good work. I did want to, and this is a general rule that I know this superintendent ascribes to, is that one can never have enough Murphys in any given situation, so I wanted to welcome Josh here.
Thank you. I second that.
But other than that.
I think that's
good job.
another interpretation of Murphy's Law that I wasn't quite familiar with, but I'll have to add that. That'll be a new definition.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nelson?
Just a quick comment, and Mr. Murphy already made. I was going to welcome Josh. It's good to see you here, Josh, tonight, and hopefully we're welcoming another administrator to the table next year. If we can accomplish that task in this year's budget, I know both of you will be happy. I don't have any
Faculty would be
specific,
happy too.
yeah, I don't have any specific questions on the report. Thank you for the good summary of it. Anytime you tackle changing the master schedule, it's a huge undertaking. And I remember when you first came before us, you were talking about getting the feedback from the faculty and listening to what their input was all about, and I think that's crucial, and I think you've done it. It's not quite there, you're not quite there yet, but you're getting there, and I know you're probably getting a ton of feedback from different people in the faculty, and it's probably varied, and it's probably a lot of different ideas, so congratulations on tackling something very difficult. I know there's been a lot of conversation about that schedule over the years. We've all heard it here on the committee, and it's not an easy thing to do. So keep at it. Don't get frustrated, and hopefully we'll see you next year with 3 people at the table.
That would be great. I want to give a shout out to our faculty, because I think that we've had some incredibly difficult conversations, and there's definitely changes that are, kind of being proposed, and the level of professionalism that they've kind of engaged in the conversation really is a credit to them. So it's, yet we're doing some heavy lifting, but those conversations don't happen easily in a lot of schools, and I think that that's really a credit to all of them, that they're able to give the feedback, that they're able to be open-minded and to come to consensus, because we're not able to make everybody happy through the process, so.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bonko?
I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. Welcome to really both of you. You never can have enough Murphys, though. I can give you that.
Everybody knows that.
Yeah, everybody knows that. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm looking forward to seeing your new schedule. It's quite a puzzle that you're putting together with that.
It is. So hopefully, again, we want to get it, before we presented it to the family community, we wanted to make sure that we could make it work. So that's kind of where we are now, and our timeline is a little bit behind.
Yeah.
We definitely
What's it-
wanted to be a little bit, having this conversation probably closer to February vacation than April vacation. So once we have said, okay, we can do this, we'll get it out to families and share it with them and get some feedback, and then we'll be ready to kind of bring it forward to you.
It's a tough task, especially to make lunch longer.
It's an important task, though.
Picking
I don't
up
know how
those
anybody can eat
minutes.
20 minutes.
Excuse me, picking up those minutes is tricky.
Mhm.
So good luck with it.
Thank you.
And then the covering of those extra minutes in the lunchroom, too.
Well, what's nice is when it's nice out, we go outside. So I
Yes.
think that's, we're waiting, it's not quite warm enough this week because we don't have jackets and things, so we're getting close. So, but I think that gives, students more time outside every day potentially too, which is definitely a needed break for them.
It's nice. Well, good luck. We're looking forward to it. It's been a topic of conversation for many years, and we look forward to seeing what is brought forth. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, great job.
Thank you.
There's a saying that with school change, you have to sort of build the airplane as you're trying to fly it. So it's not like we could say, keep the kids home for a year while we change the schedule. But I think that might be a strategy for funding, because I think if we left the middle schoolers home, I think people would probably say, please put them back in school. So anyway, but again, lots of recognition, so thank you for all the hard work. Madam Chair. I was thinking to maybe adjusting the agenda.
Really?
So,
That's what I came in
Shocking.
here thinking.
can we maybe do the budgets next while we
Yes.
have these folks
Yes,
here? And then,
definitely.
we can get to the warrant articles and then end with the out-of-state travel. Is that okay?
Yep.
So, so with that, we have the fiscal '20 draft budget for the Early Childhood Center. For Marshall Simons, we have special education and accommodated. So I can invite all four of you back up, and we can go through, we can sort of go through the,
There's only 4 of you, Josh. There we go.
go from there.
Oh,
Nicole,
actually, Josh, you were one of the founding helpers with the preschool program, or the preschool conference that was brought forth, and did a lot of work to get that off the ground, and thank you.
Collaboration.
Go back, yes, yep, so Josh has been helping everywhere for a while, thank you.
We're very lucky. I'm very lucky.
Okay. I don't know, if anyone wants? We can start with the early education on first.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. If we start with the Burlington Early Childhood Center, again, I know everyone here knows, but the Early Childhood Center is funded out of the accommodated account, so that's a separate part of the budget. And so we can get into some of those details for the Early Childhood Center. Again, Ms. Clark mentioned she's not looking for additional staffing. We can get into some of those specifics. She mentioned that there are tuition-paying families who also participate in the Early Childhood Center. And again, I know everyone here understands that, but that revenue goes to the town. That does not come into the schools. And so again, there's a combination of children who we have to provide services for, and children whose families elect to attend, and they pay tuition to attend there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole.
So the accommodated budget is in the packet that you have. It wasn't part of the electronic document because we were still working out some last minute things. when that was distributed.
That's right.
Yep.
So on here, basically there's two different summaries that you'll see in this packet. The first one's on page 1, and the second is on page 7. And the increase is a little bit different, but we'll get into that when we go to the tuitions, instead of, it's not really influenced by the BECC. On page 6 is the salaries, which there was no increase to staffing. And then for BECC expenses, on page 11, that begins.
And we had, I had met with Nicole, and we just kind of streamlined a few of our categories. They were a little bit redundant, they weren't reflective, so we kind of merged two of the computer ones together and just made some adjustments to make it a little bit more comprehensive and easier to access. So are there, I guess I can answer specific questions related to those. I can talk about specifics that are purchased or used within each account.
Again, I'm sorry, through the chair, Deb, I'm looking at for your benefits, contracted services and supplies, you're looking at basically a level funded budget, so a 0% increase? And then you're not looking for any additional staff?
No.
Okay, so, again, thank you for that. And again,
Level and zero.
one thing that was discussed last evening was, if you look at one of the lines, again, that Nicole mentioned, that the negative 11,300, that negative 11,300 was really just redistributed to other lines. So if you take the 406, the 7,600, and the 3,200, that would add up to the 11,300. So again, there's no increase, but we just more accurately put where those expenses were coming out of. And again, I think this is, this program is also an incredible value. I know it has an expense, but we are obligated to educate these children, and if we were to educate these children and not have our own programming, it would be far more expensive than it is now, and I don't believe would even match the quality that we have now. So I think we're very fortunate to have Deb and her staff running this program.
Mr. Murphy?
And just one comment, and for the benefit of people at home, we talked about a lot of this last night at the Ways and Means Committee meeting, so I think a lot of the questions that might have otherwise been asked tonight were talked about last night. So I didn't want anybody to think they were being derelict in their duties over there, but a lot of these answers were already given last night. And I just want to take the opportunity, Deb kind of got in and out of here on her school improvement plan without anybody asking her too much. But I did want to take the opportunity. Anybody that's been down there to see what they do, it's just a fantastic program. And in addition to being a financial boon to the town, because we're doing things like that in-house, as the superintendent just mentioned, the quality is better than anything you're going to find around. So hats off to you. That's a great program.
They work very hard down there.
Ms. Monco?
I agree.
Thank you.
So I mentioned this issue, it's not something that's a make or break for me, but I mentioned this issue on another budget earlier, which is that you're asking for a $2,000 water cooler. And I have nothing against getting good water in for the staff. But is that a new installation? Is that or is that a year-long contract?
That's a year-long contract. We don't have any water fountains down in the preschool.
Okay.
And we have older sinks, so we have 2 coolers. We have one in the office that the nurse can use, and we have one in the back for staff. And if students forget their drinks, we use that water cooler to provide them with water for snack time.
Okay.
So we just don't have anything in the preschool right now that we can use for filtration because we don't have any water fountains.
Do you have any water sources?
Yeah, we have
Sinks and things?
We have sinks.
Okay. And I'm just wondering, again, could we install for $2,000 a water fountain with a water bottle filler that would fill, with like we have in other schools, or would that cost $10,000? I don't know what the costs are. You do know, Mr. King?
A direct replacement sink to a filtered sink, not a sink, I'm sorry, a water bubbler. is
But she
about-
doesn't have any water bubblers.
Right,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
saying is about $2,400. To add the
Okay.
filler on top of that is about another $2,000 on top of that,
Okay.
not including the filters every year.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they don't have a water bubbler
Bubbler,
already
okay.
means
Additional.
wall installation or some other plumbing
Okay.
concerns of ours.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it'd be well upwards of the $4,000 to put it in place.
So I would like us to be thinking, going forward to the next year, how can we begin to put those things in? And maybe if next year isn't as tight of a budget, maybe we could put in a $4,000 item, which would then last and not cost us $2,000 every year. And it would mean less, transportation of water across town in cars with admissions, and it would mean, less plastic water bottles and all those things that would be good for all of us. So I'd just like to raise these issues and have us thinking, going forward, are there ways we could do that so it would be more environmentally friendly? So it's not specific to you, but
Sure, yeah.
that's, and clearly I think that we need to have good water in all of our buildings and for all of our staff and all of our students too. I also know that we are monitoring and certifying our faucets. So if there is a faucet that's allowed to be used, is my understanding that is potable water. And it's healthy and safe water coming out of the faucets if people want to fill their water bottles with those. If there are any faucets that are not safe based on the inspections, if those have been taken offline, and so any water faucets that are still, am I misunderstanding what happened? Okay, could you explain? Okay,
So when we met with the Board of Health, what we've designated is any water bubbler for drinking is
Yep.
designated as drinkable water.
Mhm.
Every other sink
Oh,
is
okay.
designated as non-potable water.
Okay.
Of course, toilets as well too, as non-potable water. So sinks are designated for washing hands,
okay,
not for drinking. It doesn't
Okay.
mean that they're unsafe, it just
Mhm.
means that they're not filtered,
right.
so.
So they might be safe, we just don't know.
It means they're not filtered,
They're not filtered.
correct?
Okay. All right, so that, but just for us to continue to think about these issues. Thank you.
Ways and Means? Okay. Seeing no other questions, I just want to again thank you for the first experience many families have with our school system is through your program. It's a very well-run, very caring, nurturing program, taking in students of all abilities. And I just want to say how much we appreciate that first experience with our school district is such a great one for families to come through too. So thank you. It's one of the reasons why we tend to keep these students with us longer and build these programs in. So thank you. Sorry, Mrs. Monco?
Frankie loves it.
And anytime we have zero and level,
Yeah.
it's also another plus, so thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and working with Nicole, we really looked at numbers to see what we had and what was spent in previous years, and I think just with readjusting, we were able to work with that, so.
Great, thank you. All right. So, next, Marshall Simons, or? And that starts on page 45. Oh,
No, that's fine.
sorry. All right, so 45. Oops.
So I don't think I have the same exact document. I have the document that I observed. I don't know if you have questions. The same as the one I submitted, okay. So
I wrote down.
That's on, expenses starts on page 46.
Page 46?
46.
I don't have zeros, but I don't have big numbers either, so it's.
And the first number's a negative 48%, so.
So I
Not bad.
too, working with Nicole this year, in developing this budget, we did do a lot of, realignment in terms of, making line items and categories that, made sense, to me. And certainly kind of, looked at, the other principles of looking things. So, where you see some of that fluctuation, it really is about taking, previously, each department would be buying, kind of budgeting for dry erase markers, and I use that as an example, but it's an actual real example. And the way that I look at it, that's an instructional supply. We need to have dry erase markers for our teachers, so why are we kind of looking at it line by line? So a lot of that happens. So we now have the office supplies, which is, the office supplies are what we need to do business. We have instructional supplies, which is what teachers use in front of students. And then we also have student supplies, which are the supplies that we make sure that students have in school. So really, when you see those big pluses or minuses, it was really a realignment. Big shifts that that you might see is that in social studies and science, in planning for the development of new curriculum and making sure that we have resources available, we realigned many of our instructional supplies in the departments into those areas. Where we have a new math program going into our third year, that wasn't something that we really needed a large budget item in terms of the equipment or supplies there. So I don't know if there are specific questions, but.
Again, through the chair, again, Carrie, I'm just looking at this, you have again, a supply budget that looks like it's gone up about $5,000 from last year to this year, so overall, so, and again, I think with the realignment, with getting to know a school, I think that's very reasonable, my opinion.
Questions, comments?
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
No. And again, the staffing with the schedule, we were saying we're really trying to stick to the staffing that
Yeah.
we have.
So the only, the increase that we have, one is related to special education programming, and we're asking for an increase of one FTE for an instructional assistant for our Bridge program. Our Bridge program is our social emotional behavioral support program. Really serves the needs of students who are both acting in, but can also sometimes act out, and that to support both populations in one program, we really need some additional staffing in that area. We've also requested an increase of 0.4 for our math coach. We right now have a 0.6, a part-time person providing both intervention and extension to students in the area of mathematics. We would like to complement that 0.6 with a 0.4 and bring it to a full FTE in that area. And then the other is the addition of the second, or the reintroduction of the second assistant principal.
Which I think you were virtually promised by Mr. Nelson.
Is it in the budget?
It's-
Yes, all of those are included in the budget.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi, Mary.
Welcome, and thank you.
Thank you for having me. Basically, I think we have a theme going, because if you look at the total operating budget for the special ed department, it is also the same as it was in previous years, with a number of items moved around so that I can understand where it's going, and plan more effectively each year. I needed to be able to track certain supplies, technology supplies, home hospital tutoring for students who are hospitalized or unable to leave their homes. So Nicole and I worked together to create new lines, but we have not changed the amount of money overall.
That's on page 151. This is the operating.
Can you count that high?
So, again, through the chair, Mary, that you, again, for your supply budget, again, a 0% increase, right? So just
correct.
19 to 20.
I'm sorry. Mrs. Monco.
I'm, excuse me, I notice you have 30,000 budgeted for legal. Do you really make it through the year with that?
I always like to say that the legal is a moving target. Some years, we could certainly be less than that. Right now, knock on wood, we are less than that.
I had a good year, huh?
But we don't know always what's gonna come up. So I think it's a reasonable number. I don't think we'll hit it exactly every year. My goal would be to be under every year. We were doing pretty good recently. But I think it's a good approximation.
So if you have, for instance, a hearing or something, how much does that run for a legal?
If we actually went to hearing, that is a $25,000 to $50,000 expenditure for a
Right.
district.
So you've been avoiding those well.
I would like to avoid those well. But it depends on what is happening, really, with where you land with the
It
legal.
just, when I saw 30, I mean, that's great if we can do it, but I would just like to be on record as saying that some years that isn't gonna cut it.
Right. I agree.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
No?
Comments?
Wow, you came
But
out for
yeah,
this?
Wow.
Mr.
Mr. Eiler, do you, no?
No.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you also for, I'm
The
sorry.
accommodated portion of the,
Yes,
this then.
yep.
Accommodated.
Okay, I'll wait for your first year. Well, it's the first year, special ed, has been great, so thank you.
So again, back to the packet that was distributed. On page 1 and on page 7, there's the two different summaries. And basically, the difference here would be building programs in order to keep students in district, and the staffing would cost less than the transportations and the tuitions. But I'll let Mary jump into that.
So again, just through the chair, we were asked to present the high school life skills program in two ways. So the way on page 1, the 8.9% increase, that is not creating a high school program, and that is educating those students outside of Burlington High School. And then the summary on page 7, the 6.59% increase in the accommodated would be to have Mary and her staff bring in a teacher and assistant, and she can speak about sort of what they're going to do specifically. I'm sure you'll have questions, but that's to educate students. Again, our hope is to keep those students at Burlington High School and to begin to create some new programming at Burlington High School that would be a complement to the programs that we've created at the elementary and middle school level. Believe it or not, those students or those children are now aging to the point where they'll be coming up to the high school next year. So again, we were asked to present it two ways. And so that's the reason there are two summary pages. And I'll let Mary get into the specifics of the high school program that we'd like you to support.
So I'd like to develop a high school program for students that require a continuation of their academic skills, but also need to have a heavy focus on functional life skills, vocational skills, job training skills. We would expect this to allow them a substantially separate classroom, so they would kind of be off schedule for a lot of their day from the rest of the high school schedule, but also for those students who were interested in a certain area that the high school could offer them, be allowed to participate in that as well, which is why we would need at least 2 staff to do that. We do have a transition coordinator from lab right now who works with high school students, and we would use that coordinator to begin to develop a kind of program that expands in the vocational and job focus as the students get older.
Mr. Murphy?
I don't have, we talked about this fairly thoroughly last night. I don't have any questions on the proposal. More just a general comment. When we did this with the preschool program a number of years ago, we did it with the classes over at Pine Glen, bringing things like this in-house. There was always a comment at the town meeting, and people follow up over time saying, I thought by doing this, there was gonna be a big reduction in the accommodated account for this, that, or the other thing. And you have to look at this, it's a cost avoidance. Costs aren't ever gonna go away, but you've gotta think of what the cost of the out-of-school or out-of-district placements and transportation, everything would be had we not done what we've done so far. And so I think people tend to try to evaluate it monetarily, looking at it from the wrong side, I think. So I just want to make that point. We're talking here tonight about bringing this program into the high school, and the numbers we talked about last night, in my opinion, were very clearly made the case for doing it. But sure, as we're sitting here, somebody's going to say something next year or 2 years or 3 years from now saying, geez, I thought there was going to be a big reduction in the accommodated account now because you brought this system into the high school. But I just don't want people to have the wrong idea. That's not going to happen, but you can be sure that if we didn't do it, whatever the accommodated number is 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now would be a lot higher. So I just wanted to kind of make that point. I support the request. I think it makes a lot of sense. Similar to the preschool program, we get to do it in-house, and we get to give it the quality that it deserves and that we have the control over, and ultimately it also makes sense monetarily for the town. And one other comment, I just don't share Mrs. Monaco's issue with the lawyers trying to make a living, so I just want to have that
Where'd
out
that
there.
come
for
from?
So do what you have to do legally.
Didn't say they shouldn't make a living. I said they needed more money to feed their kids.
Mrs. Monaco, follow up.
So the program that we're looking at here for the high school, where does that program exist, or a similar type of program exist now? At what levels?
In the elementary level, they're kind of spread out in a few spots, but I would say that with a little bit of work, what is now called the Language-Based Learning Disabilities Program at Francis Wyman, we changed the name to Strides this year, and then the Life Skills Program at the middle school. So those students would be kind of those programs would be the programs that would
Okay,
feed
so
up to this.
but it's more specifically that program at Francis Wyman, not any of the programs at any of the other buildings, elementary.
No, correct, right now.
Okay.
There could be some students that are currently in the DSC who, as they get older, because the DSC has a little bit of a blend in some of the
It might be movement
programming right
between
now,
programs.
that some of those students could shift as they go through the middle school towards the high school.
Okay, I just wanted to get a picture of what kind of peer group we're looking at.
Ms. Simon?
I'm really delighted that we're going to be putting in a program like this for kids at the high school level where we have a cohort of students who've been in district receiving the appropriate services for their special needs, and that those students who've now been included in our community are able to continue to be included in our community. And there are a lot of out-of-district placements that provide wonderful services for kids, but as someone who's been a teacher in programs like that at other high schools, I find it really valuable for all of the students. We've been talking here about inclusion in so many different ways, But what my experience as a parent is that my child, when there were students in her elementary school from this kind of a program, whatever it was called at the time, she just had another friend. And her friend was in her classroom most of the time and not in her classroom some of the time. And when they got to middle school, this was a number of years ago, there wasn't a program, and her friend went off to school somewhere else. And I do understand that that friend has completed a college program as well. So the idea that those students can stay in the community schools in our district is really wonderful, and I think it's really important. I think it's important for the students who are in those programs, and I think it's important for all of our students. When we talk about it takes a village, you know, and kids who can continue to have lunch. They may not be able to go to math with their friends from elementary school, but they can go to lunch with their friends from elementary school or other classrooms that they could. And I think it's really important. And I also think it's important not to just have them take gym and art and lunch, but to have curriculum that's appropriate for them, that they are continuing to learn the academic skills that they need to function in life, that they continue to do the vocational and the other life skills kinds of strategies. So I'm really thrilled that we're going to be doing this, and it does add 2 lines to the accommodated account, but that would have been 6 lines of out-of-district tuition, as Mr. Murphy was pointing out, and I think that this is a side benefit is that we are going to save money by doing this, even though it's adding 2 lines to the accommodated account. But I just think it's wonderful to be doing that. I'm looking forward to seeing how it starts and where it goes, and if we had renovation going on in this building, creating space that would be really appropriate for them as well. So I'm really pleased about that.
So thank you. Ms. Creedon?
I just wanted to say thank you, Mary, for all the hours you spent with us and all the questions, and it's a great proposal. We're really excited about it, and, you know, you were very generous with your time multiple times, so we really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I just want to clarify, by having this program because I just asked for it to be on the TV, and it's not, so for those at home. So by having this program being put into the high school, we're adding 2 staff for the program?
A teacher and an instructional assistant.
Okay. And the rough cost for that? Roughly, just.
So the cost of
These 2.
the staffing is $98,664.
Okay, so 98,000 versus sending a number of students. The other option would be that they would be outplaced.
Correct.
Correct, okay, thank you. So, you know, I can't speak highly enough when you bring a program like this into the system for many reasons. Yes, financial is always a key component to it, but in Burlington, the programs have been built and grown very thoughtfully with the children's interests and needs in mind. Dr. Conti says if we can't do it well and we can't do it to the level of our students, then we shouldn't do that. And I've seen through the past year the efforts and everything you've done with the program, the special ed program in general, and have been very, very pleased to see that, and the support of the school committee members who have been, you know, reaching out in the ways and means, who have been traveling to schools and looking at the program. So I appreciate all of that, and most importantly, having our students in our community with their friends, with the teachers. At the high school, we have so many different people through here. We have the SRO officer, getting to know all our students. We have different activities, after-school programs, and all of that just builds, again, the whole child. And, you know, eventually, when they do leave high school, they have a whole community with them. So, you know, on many levels, I can't say enough to support this program, and I appreciate taking the time and building it, and the parents and families who have come through this school district and would like to remain here at the high school with their students, so thank you. Anything else? Okay. All right, Ms. Kasha, we're good? Okay, so hopefully you're out before 9. Better than our
Positive thing.
last
Thank you all for coming
budget
out.
Thank you.
numbers, so
Appreciate it.
thank you. Appreciate it. I feel like we forgot something
We
after
did, but
last
we-
meeting.
We did, we forgot a couple things, so
Longer.
let me,
Okay.
let me get just to it. Sharon, am I missing the out-of-state travel? What- Very good. I don't have it. I will have it right now. Just quickly before I get to warrant articles, out-of-state travel request has been submitted for middle school music teacher to attend a Level 2 Music Learning Theory certification course at the University of Michigan during the final week of school. Mr. Mullen will share course information with Burlington staff during the BPS Con, our conference at the start of the year. Principal Purchase and John Middleton are in support of the request. There's no financial implications to the district. It's recommended school approve the out-of-state travel for Andrew Mullen to Michigan State University, June 15th through 25th.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. Now if we can get to the warrant articles. They need to be submitted, I believe, on March 29th. So by 1 o'clock. So we would need to approve the warrant articles tonight that we're going to submit to,
Excuse me.
to town meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bob. We have I think a couple different scenarios for you all to consider tonight.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am?
Actually, Mrs.
Didn't you
Malco?
want to talk about staffing?
I did want to talk about staffing. Do you want to do that next, or you want to do that after warrant articles?
Well, that's up to you.
Let's jump into warrant articles now, and I have that I wanted to go over elementary staffing at the end,
Okay.
if that's okay.
So included in your packet, and I think earlier last week, I sent all of you in Ways and Means some updated information. If at our previous meeting, we were $372,000 over the recommended number that we were looking to get to. They also were not in priority. What you have in front of you tonight is a more prioritized list, and we're at that $372,000 reduction. In order to get to that $372,000 reduction, of course, we had to take 2 projects off and also reduce 2 of the projects. The Memorial and Marshall Simon's painting, reduced those by $10,000 apiece just to get to that number. I'm not sure if we would like to go over some of these, or if there's some questions that haven't been answered or new questions that have come up for each one of these, if we want to take some time to go over them one by one again, or...
Can you just state the ones that are been removed from our ongoing list that we're working on? The Pine Glen interior lighting and ceiling tiles project was one.
Correct.
And-
That alone was $300,000 just for the Pine Glen one.
Is it possible to get this on the TV?
It can be. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Steve, you can use it. I've got the man.
Give me 1 second, sir. Yes, I can get it.
I've
Thank
been
you.
known to do that.
Do you need the new one?
Oh, I think it's the same information, it's just I didn't have the cover letter.
Thank you.
The reduced one. So what you're seeing on the screen right now is the original one that was presented 2 weeks ago, and that's the one at 1,772, so $1,772,000. So in this one right here, you'll see that the Pine Glen ceiling tiles that I'm highlighting right now for $300,000 has been removed. You'll also see that the Fox Hill water pumps for $15,000, previously warrant number 220-10, has been removed. You'll also see that the music band lockers for $37,047 has been removed. And then number 16 and 17, which are the paintings, each were $50,000 apiece. I'll highlight those ones right now. Those have been reduced to $40,000 apiece. So if I open up this one, the new one in front of you that you all have in your packets has been reduced to 16 warrants instead of 17 warrants. I'm sorry, 18 warrants. 19 warrants, I said that, my mistake. So 19 warrants on the original one, $372,000 reduction. The one in front of you is 16 warrants for $1.4 million.
These are prioritized the way they're listed now?
Mhm.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee submit warrant article 20-01 for design and engineering for the BHS HVAC system in the amount of $100,000.
Second.
All right, it's been moved in second. Discussion. Mr. Eiler?
Only because I wanted to ask about what you eliminated ones, and if people don't know, the other ones would be out of money. So it's just the water pump one in particular, the original backup had said that they were leaking, so I just wanted to make sure you really don't need that for another year.
Oh, we need them.
So we do need them, but during the reduction, we'll put that in our operating costs. Since there's 3 pumps and 2 of them we're looking to replace, we're definitely going to rebuild one in our operating, and I think we'll be all set without asking for the request this year.
Great, thank you.
So.
Just, Madam Chair, before we get, let you vote, take the vote, and then I want to interrupt the process.
All those in favor?
Question. No other discussion? Okay. No other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
So, Madam Chair, I am learning lots of new things as we go through the process and transition, to continue the transition for the, from the prior business office to the present business office. One of the programs that we've had in place, I think, since I've been here, and I believe has gone long before that, was our summer custodial program, where we would bring, I think it's typically college students in, and they work, and they get paid hourly, and I think there's some painters, and they come in and help out. And that program was supported by the building rental account that was run through the business office. I think that we've had some changes in how in our tenants in terms of how the rental is happening. We no longer had rented the Bay Path, which was a large renter for us and brought in some significant revenue. We now have Lab, and I think in Nicole's projections, we don't have enough money in the building rental account to support the summer custodial program. It's obviously close to April. It's late in the year. And I'm not saying it's something that we shouldn't consider, but I just think the program has a long history. I think that we should talk about it more. I think one of the suggestions that came to me is, would it be possible as a bridge year while we have these conversations, and when we think about how much rental income we can have coming in, for us to potentially look at a warrant article to support, or at least help support, the summer custodial project just for this one summer as we try to figure it out. It can't be sustained, again, in the way it was, just because we have, we're not bringing in as much rental income. But again, I think in working with Nicole, we probably need to look at even how much we're charging for rent. We just need some time to rethink how we can fund the program. I do think it's an important program. And again, one of the suggestions that was made before you approve all the warrants is if we could look through the warrants again, possibly delay some warrants for a year while we try to figure out how to support the summer custodial program. If it's not a priority of the committee, certainly we cannot do that, but I did ask Bob to rethink that, and we did have a very quick conversation as to whether we could pay the summer custodians out of a warrant, and we believe that we can. We probably need to have more communication, but this would be something that if we are transitioning away, I'd just like to spend more time transitioning away from that program, or rethink how we can find a sustainable revenue source to support the program moving forward.
Mr. Murphy?
As the superintendent's mentioned, and this program goes back to when Steve and I were in high school and probably before that, so it's something that this department has traditionally done, and the recreation department does it for the rec maintenance as well. The summer programs, they give local high school kids and college kids employment over the summer, and it's they've, at least in the school department, definitely they've been a great benefit to the custodians as they spend the summer breaking down the schools and cleaning them up and then setting them back up. It's there's some extra hands that allow them to do that. So to me, I think it's a crucial benefit, both for the young people in town and for the school department. So I would certainly support the suggestion that perhaps, and I think it was Mr. Nelson's suggestion, that perhaps we do this via a warrant article, at least for the bridge year. I think maybe as you go forward, you can get a handle on what type of income you reasonably can expect, and maybe we don't hire as many kids as we have in years past if the revenue's not there, but I think it's important that we at least put some of them on, because I think they certainly they help the custodians get the buildings clean every summer, which is obviously important. So looking at the list before us and the in the priority order that they're in, the last two, the two painting warrant articles, one for Memorial, one for Marshall Simons, $40,000 each. So if perhaps the painting can be deferred for a year, we can take those two and reassign that $80,000 to a warrant article to assist in the payment of the school summer program. And if that's something that you can handle, Bob, in terms of we can put the painting off for a year, I would suggest that as appropriate use of that $80,000 for this coming year until you have a chance to kind of look at the whole thing again.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, Tom said pretty much everything that I was going to say. I agree with everything that Tom said. There's no way the number of custodians that we have in each building can get all of the rooms ready in 6 weeks or 8 weeks, or however long the summer is, without help from the summer custodial staff. And Tom and I both know from experience that you need extra hands to do all of the work that's necessary to get those rooms ready. And I think the teachers would rather have rooms that are ready to go, clean, the floors are clean, the carpets are clean, the walls are clean, the desks are clean, than have a fresh coat of paint on Memorial School, which is only 5 years old, and the Marshall Simons, which has been done over recently. I like the idea of painting them and keeping them up, don't get me wrong. I think I would have supported these warrant articles wholeheartedly, but I think that it's more important to have the summer custodial staff in the schools to get the rooms ready and the corridors ready than it is to repaint them this particular year. So I would support, when we get down to the bottom of the list, deleting the 20-15 and 20-16 and replacing it with a new one to provide the $80,000 in that warrant article, and hopefully we can make up the other 20 or whatever we need out of the building rental account. So if we need 100 or 120, we hire what we need. We take the 80 out of this year, or we come in slightly over the $1.4 million, but I'd rather come in at the $1.4 million and pull 20,000 out of the building rental account. And next year, hopefully we'll be able to fund it within the building rental account if we make some changes, as Dr. Conti said and as Tom said. But it's critical. I mean, I did it myself when I was a young man, many years ago. And they work hard and they're necessary. It's not just busy work.
Ms. Simon?
Well, I think Mr. Murphy and Mrs. Nelson have more detailed information because they attended the subcommittee meeting last night. But I don't have any idea what scope we're talking about. How much did the program cost in the past? What's the difference in our rental costs? And I don't know if we want to get into all that detail, but it's a little hard for me to talk about it. Like, which one should we consider? I mean, you mentioned 104,000, so I don't know if that, what are we looking at finding? Because, yeah, so could you?
Again, I have some information. So last year, we hired approximately 40 workers. So again, I'm not sure whether it was 41 or 30, but right around 40. And the cost of the program was around $125,000 for the summer. So, and again, I can't speak for Mr. Murphy or Mr. Nelson. I'm assuming the bottom two warrant articles were chosen because were in a priority list from us. So I'm assuming you were taking the two warrant articles that we were saying were our lowest priority. Obviously, the 80 doesn't fully support the 125. I'm not sure we may have to hire fewer summer workers, but I still think that's better than eliminating the program completely. And then if there are other resources that we can do that, and again, it is completely my oversight. I just assumed there would be enough in the building rental account. I didn't realize that the rental income was going to drop off as significantly as it did, and so I just need to rethink this program, the cost of this program, and then how we can sustain this. So again, for Ways and Means, we would have no intention of having. I would consider this warrant article a bridge until we can sort of figure out how best to create a rental environment that we can support this program moving forward.
So in that case, what Mr. Murphy suggested makes sense to me. And you mentioned, if we could maybe, instead of having 40, we could have 35, or, if there's a way to make it a little less expensive, and knowing that you're going to look going forward in terms of where's the income for this program, planning for the future funding, I would support the kind of thing. I don't know if $20,000 is available right now, or, but
Right.
whatever, if Ms. Kasha and you figure out, that would make sense to me, but I would want to look at, could we have fewer summer custodians and, do something like that, but also to take the two items from the bottom of your list. I also had been looking at, for the Francis Wyman library furniture was the next one on, and is that something where they could use 20,000 less and get the rest of it another year, or is that the kind of thing where you replace everything and that doesn't make any sense? So those were the thoughts I had on it.
Mrs. Malco?
I'm really frustrated because I think that our budget is too tight. I think everything's too tight. I think we've been putting up with it for years. And maybe I'm not in a good mood because of things going on in life, like my friend dying. But I'm just really annoyed that we don't have the money to do the things that we need to do. I think it's absolutely crazy that we have to hire fewer summer kids to help with the custodial work because we don't have the money. We should have the money. And I think we need to ask the town for the money. So that's my position. I'm tired of going along to get along. We need more money. We need it in the budget for these positions that we cut out last year. We need it for the summer help. We need it for all kinds of things, and I don't think we're doing a good job by cutting everything back to save a small amount of money. It just doesn't make sense to me. Let's do things right. So, how much money do you expect would be available in the summer rental account? And we don't want to deplete it. I don't mean the building rental account. We don't want to deplete that. You always want to have some kind of a running balance in that, but what do you think might be in it come summertime?
Sure.
Go for it, Nicole.
So, right now, I don't have, I guess, projections on what we're still looking to collect, but I can get those figures. But as of right now, if we weren't to take in any additional income, it would be about 23,000 remaining.
Okay, so we really can't spend that money, in my opinion. You got 23,000, you're not gonna spend it. We have a problem. I have a suggestion. Let's ask for a little bit more money. Let's ask for the whole 125 and go over. I know we never do that. We go along to get along, but I think we should go over and ask town meeting for the money. That's my opinion.
Any other, okay. So my question is, without the summer custodial, are we looking at overtime for custodians? How, or do we just not clean the schools to a level? The floors don't get stripped down as much? What are we looking at for not doing this work?
I'm gonna have to defer to Bob, so I don't really know. I know this, when I spoke with the custodians, they did tell me they really rely on the summer help to get the work that they need to get done. That's what they said. They didn't quantify it for me.
And I know a number of them come home exhausted, and their parents appreciate that, so they're doing something. I mean, they literally come home exhausted and aching. So they're moving stuff, I know that, but, you know, I would hate to cut off our nose by our face and end up with either poorly prepared buildings or custodial overtime, or whatever might that other option be.
I think the answer is all the above, meaning that we would either not clean all the rooms, we would have to work the current crew to the bone at all hours of the night. And if we look at previous years, even with the summer help, we come right to the line every single year. I mean, we don't stop 3 weeks before and put our feet up. They're going right to the last day, and even the day that the teachers are here. You know, let's say a BCAT con, then they're at the other building still finishing those. You know, we have summer programs, we have sporting events, music events, things that are constantly in. You'll see halls that are shut down 1 week, but then, you know, all over the place. So I know we won't be able to get the same amount of work done, which means that, you know, this year would end up having to be a transition year, which would be, you know, rough for some of the teachers. We would have to look at a multi-phase, getting some done now, moving to next year, doing some, looking at some of our, you know, winter breaks, fall breaks, things like that, to get back into classrooms. We just wouldn't get the same level of attention done that we have in previous years to come back into that building after the summertime to a freshly cleaned, ready-to-go building. We could not handle it and be ready for the same entrance that we are used to.
So, I guess what do I suggest? We have, again, lots of other warrant articles. I think that Bob has a sheet that he can hand out that, just because I asked him to prepare sort of a pathway. forward that does keep us within the 1.4. Again, Ms. Monaco, I will certainly defer to your opinion, but I feel like my suggestion to you all has to be at the guideline that I agreed to, which is going to be the 1.4. This is only one aspect, and it's actually a relatively small percentage of all that we're asking for. So I just, I think it's an important program, but I would like to make sure that we have your approval on the other warrants, and then I'll just hand out a new cover sheet for you all to look at. And it may be that, again, I'm not even sure if it makes sense to approve the painting and the summer custodial help, because we don't have to submit the warrants until the 29th. Would it make sense?
March or of April?
March.
That's this Friday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm saying, do we submit more warrant articles, and then do we withdraw a warrant article if you
Yeah,
need
we
to
can
have
always withdraw.
more
Yeah.
conversation, I guess
Okay.
is what I'm saying. I think I've seen warrant articles withdrawn at town meeting floor. I just was gonna look to Ways and Means to, again, I understand what our guideline is, I'm just saying, just for sake of more conversation, do we put on an additional capital warrant project, and then we would obviously have to debate whether we keep it on or pull it off for town meeting. And I think, I just want you to understand my intention for doing that. Do you have the handouts? So again, so for now, Bob, why don't you continue to go down through the warrants, and then when we get to the end.
Well, I'll make a motion at this point. We approve the first one. Why don't we go down the list?
Yes.
So we can get through these, and then
Yes.
when we get to the last 2 or 3, we can decide whether we want to do an extra one
Yes.
or maybe delete. I think that's what
Here's
the
the
I'd
most
like
recent.
to
Thank you, Mr. Nelson.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve warrant article 20-02, Marshall Simons Middle School boiler repair in the amount of $125,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-03 for the CS for All curriculum and furniture in the amount of $200,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-04, district-wide walkie-talkies in the amount of $105,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Seeing- Yeah, okay.
Could we get any cost sharing on that one?
I did that one, didn't I? Yeah. I did that. Let's get that.
Eric, could we get any cost sharing on the walkie-talkies? I mean, it isn't just schools.
This portion is just schools.
Oh, had to break the balloon, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Just schools, huh? Not the police department? Can we get a rental from them or anything?
They'll probably want to charge us for listening on our emergency calls. So, no, again, so just to be clear, this is going to have a water tower antenna, 97 walkie-talkies in our buildings.
Who pays for the water tower antenna?
It's part of the project, so that's
Yes.
included.
Well, why don't we ask the town to pay for the antenna?
Be-
That would pay for our
if you-
summer program.
If you would like to do that, then yes, I agree with you.
It would pay for our summer program. Why are we paying for an antenna on the water tower?
So our 6 buildings can talk to each other.
Okay,
You want to take a vote on that?
sure, why
You
not?
vote against it, please?
No.
All right. Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
I'm in
Aye.
favor.
Reluctantly, aye.
Opposed, abstained, it reluctantly passed 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committees approve the submission of warrant article 20-05, Pine Glen Sewer Pump in the amount of $14,000.
Second,
It's been moved in second. Any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-06 for Project Adventure in the amount of $116,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-07 Pine Glen room renovation in the amount of $40,000.
Second with a question.
Okay.
Is this to make additional space because we're out of classrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the backup, there are 2 drawings that will include renovating a storage room
Yeah,
and
I saw the
reducing it.
room. We all saw the room when we went there.
Okay.
Does that amount also include renovating the egg? Okay.
Yes,
The egg.
that's the second drawing.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The egg is the main office, room to the right between the office and the cafeteria.
Okay.
All right. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain, against, abstain, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-08, the Fox Hill room renovation in the amount of $25,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstain, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-09 for the Francis Wyman bathroom renovations in the amount of $140,000.
Second question, is there any wiggle room on that amount?
If you would like to do less bathrooms, yes.
Fewer bathrooms would cost how much for each bathroom?
It's approximately $35,000 per bathroom.
Okay.
So this is a repeat of last year's warrant article to do 4 bathrooms. I mean, I think the price went up $4,000 this year just because, you know, plywood's $2 more and things like that. But, you know, I think last year was $136 and this is $140.
Okay.
Seeing no further questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-10 Francis Wyman air conditioning phase 3 in the amount of $225,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-11, the Burlington High School vinyl floor replacement streets 1 and 2 in the amount of $50,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing
I just
none.
want to make one
Oh,
quick comment.
yes.
The track team runs up and down these corridors, and
Yeah.
I've
Yep.
been informed that the tiles are not in great shape.
Can we take it out of the athletic revolving account?
I should have kept my mouth shut.
Yeah?
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-12, the BHS Computer Lab in the amount of $33,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-13, the MSMS cafeteria tables in the amount of $65,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-14, Francis Wyman Library furniture in the amount of $82,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-15 for memorial interior painting in the amount of $40,000.
He's going to do them all and then withdraw at town meeting.
Okay, second.
Okay. Any further discussion?
The reason I moved that, Madam Chairman, was in response to Superintendent's comments that we don't need to make a final decision right now. We could,
But we
We
need
can
the
add them all
seasonal
in.
employees. We need a separate warrant
we need a
article for
separate one. I'm
this.
going to make that motion, too.
So what number
So
is the
I'm going to vote in
memorial?
favor of 20-15 15 with the understanding that maybe we can take a vote later on to withdraw some of these, if we decide we do not want to go over the 1.4 million.
Yeah, I know, but now we have two
16.
sets of
So
numbers.
this will be 17.
Okay.
The warrant article number, the new 15 is seasonal employees. The old 15 was what?
No, so right now we're voting on 15, which is the interior painting for Memorial.
Right, but if you look at
16.
this one, it's seasonal employees, they're different.
That
don't
was
have
just
that.
an example.
So,
That was just a for instance.
yeah, if we want
Just
to
handed it out.
take out
I got a different handout.
Okay,
Oh, were there
What?
two of them?
No,
I
this,
missed it.
this was the original email that Mr. Kuna had
No,
sent
no, I
out
just got this
earlier.
one. It doesn't say seasonal employees.
Right, so we're going to make 17 seasonal employees.
Okay, so 20-16, Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the
No,
submission.
no, what about?
50, we
Oh,
didn't-
let's vote on
painting.
15, I'm sorry.
What about the other painting?
Any other
Right.
discussion on 2015, which is the memorial interior painting? Seeing none, all those in favor of the memorial interior painting?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, it passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee approve the submission of warrant article 20-16 for the Marshall Simons interior painting in the amount of 40,000.
Second.
It's been moved in second, any discussion? Seeing none,
It's a rerun
those in favor?
for
Aye.
80,000.
Those in favor? Or those in favor for 2016 interior painting Marshall Simons?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee submit an additional warrant article to cover what we're calling seasonal employees. You can move to increase it.
Nobody will go with it.
Well, I'll make the motion for $125,000, and we'll see what happens. That's for seasonal
second it.
employees, meaning summer custodial help for
27.
all of the schools.
Second.
I'd like to ask a
I feel
question.
better now.
Yes,
John's
So-
gonna,
So we just came up with a number of 125,000 because that was referred to. I'd like to ask Mr. Cuna and Dr. Conti what number they feel is the most appropriate number to put into this warrant.
Again, I was looking to stay at the 1.4, so that's
Mhm.
where I was getting my number from, and we were
Mhm.
going to look for the number of employees to sort of match that. If we could find some additional resources, again, we could always increase the number of employees. Again, the 125 is what the cost of the program was in 2019, last summer. So if you're asking us to replicate the program that we've had, then it would be $125,000.
bingo.
I'd like to,
What, I'm sorry? Nicole's saying you can vote it as a to be determined as well, so, to be determined amount. We just need to get it on the warrant,
Right.
and then we can, continue the conversations
I
later.
like 125. What do you think, Steve?
Mr. Murphy?
Actually, two things. One, is if this is being voted as 20-17, we had the community custodial on as 2017, so we just have to push that one back just for reference sake.
Good point, yeah.
Secondly, I was gonna, we have many times in the past, past placeholder warrant articles that they get backfilled later on or withdrawn later on, so we can certainly just do a TBD on an amount. But having said all that, my inclination, in the event that we ultimately go forward with this, I would like to keep it at 1.4, and if that means doing it for 80,000, ultimately, I would prefer that and reduce the crew by a few to get down to within that budget. That's just my opinion. We don't have to decide that this evening. But I do think that we can leave the amount to be determined, and we'll have this discussion further, sometime between now and town meeting.
Ms. Simon?
so do we need to amend, or, so I'd like to make a motion to amend what Mr. Nelson proposed as an amendment to, for the amount of to be decided.
Second.
All right, it's been moved in second, further discussion? Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, I'm just thinking for planning purposes, and to let the town know what some of us might be thinking, if we leave the 125 in, and it and we ended up taking out the 240s for the painting. If my math is correct, then we're $1,445,000, Bob, is that the right number? If we would have approved the 125? So instead of $1.4 million, we're $1,445,000, which I think Mrs. Monaco was gonna say isn't much money in the grand scheme of things. We probably got Ways and Means would know about $10, $11 million in free cash. All the warrant articles are coming out of free cash. So I guess the debate is, do we take an extra 45 out of free cash to make sure we're maintaining the building? So at least people know what number we're coming in at instead of a to be determined. They can think about it. Maybe Ways and Means can debate it a little bit as well. So I'd like to keep my number in or Chris's number in.
We could always amend it down on town meeting floor.
We could. They could knock it down, or we could knock it down.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I suppose that's a good point. I mean, by putting a number in there, we've capped it, so we can't come in and ask for 200,000.
Yeah.
No.
I'd be interested in knowing if anyone on the Ways and Means Committee has any input to this
Diane
discussion.
Mr. Eiler?
Just speaking for myself, not the committee on this one. So I'm certainly sympathetic to Ms. Monaco's position. You know I love you.
I know, John.
I think the right time to bring up issues like this, if the school committee doesn't feel that they're getting sufficient budget for the year, the right time is really when the levy limit is being set to make that argument. If we just plain don't have enough money to do what we think needs to be done with schools, then that has to go back to the beginning of the process, really. I think the wrong time to be spending your goodwill capital is right now, quite frankly. And I think spending that capital for such a percentage-wise small increase seems unwise. I think you're sending a message that we're not going to stay in budget or on guideline, and you're not getting a lot for it, quite frankly. If you're going to blow it, well, you go for an extra $500,000 or something. But
All right, why don't we do that?
Go all in. But to do it for $45,000 seems, quite frankly, not very politically astute, and I know that's certainly not how I would normally describe you. So I would suggest that it makes sense to stay in guideline and take the battle to the beginning of the process, and when I guess it's at the selectmen's meeting that these levy limits are set, have the discussion then that we don't feel enough money is being raised to do what needs to be done, if that's the position you want to take. Right now, there's a 3% guide, or I'm sorry, 3.5% guideline. It was split 3.25% for the town, 3.75% for the schools. And I know that certainly on the town side, the comments have been made that we're squeezing it under our 3.25% here, and I think, everyone's feeling the pain. And so really, if you need more money, get a bigger pot. I think the wrong thing to do is to look at free cash and reserve funds and things like that and say, well, let's just get it from there. So that would be my suggestion, is to probably a better long-term way to deal with that situation.
Mr. Murphy? Thank you.
Just in response, I ultimately agree with you. I would disagree. I don't think it's probably don't have to be discussing this evening, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's difficult when we sit down in October, November, when we start this, to know what in this particular case, what our warrant needs are going to be come next March. So it's really not practical to foresee exactly, we might need an extra X amount. We don't even know what the assigned warrant amount is until just a few weeks ago, so. I understand your point, I just don't think it's practical to do it. I think having those discussions right now is appropriate, because that's ultimately what town meeting is for. If they want to appropriate the money, they can. If they don't think they want to, then they don't have to. But we have to have the discussions of what we need and bring it to town meeting, if that's what we feel is the appropriate way. I'd also point out that last year, typically we split 50-50 warrant articles with the town. We kicked back a certain amount of our share last year because the town needed to buy, I don't even know what the piece of equipment was, but they essentially went over their guideline, and we went under our guideline to assist them in some sort of a purchase last year, whatever the equipment was. So, and I think that's happened over the years with the warrant articles. There's always been a little going back and forth as needs warrant. So I have no problem with us doing that, but I do ultimately agree with your analysis that I'm not sure that's worth the fight right now for this amount of money. So I agree with that conceptually, but I don't, I would not agree that it's not appropriate for us to bring it up now and potentially bring it up at town meeting if we felt that was the way to go.
Ms. Vanko?
Yeah, so when we do that meeting in the fall for guidelines, I can never quite get close enough to kick Eric hard enough to get him to ask for more. So we kind of go across the room with, well, okay, we can manage with this, and, you know, we'll say, no, up, we need more money, Eric. And, you know, he's a really nice guy, and so he goes along with them. But I understand your point relative to, say, the budget. You know, we have this guideline. I honestly feel as though I've been on the school committee a lot of years, and there has never, ever been a year where it was okay to get a little more money, because, you know, it's like the mentality of cut. Everything is tight, and I think I've just gotten to the point where I'm not sure it makes sense for the school department. I honestly believe that there are things we have to do, and we can't do them because of money. For instance, as I keep repeating, the positions that, you know, the assistant principal positions. And when it comes to the warrant articles, that is decided late in the game. It's decided based on how much free cash there is and how much is going here and there and wherever. And then traditionally, we sort of split it, not always 50-50. Like Tom said last year, we got less, they got more. And I'm not one to burn my political capital, as you noted. On the other hand, I think I've reached a point where I think as one member of this committee, I feel I have to say enough. Everything is simply too tight. We have growing enrollments, they grow gradually, but they grow. We have a good system, it's based on a lot of research, it's done well, it costs money. Every year it costs more money. And if we're gonna do it and do it right and have our buildings and have them look decent and have them clean, it just doesn't make sense to me to not go to the town and say, we need a little bit more money to get this done. So that's how I feel. Whatever, but that's my position.
I want to jump in here too and say that we've been in a transition for the past 2 years. And I think we are seeing from loss of BCAT, loss of different incomes that we had, a lot of areas that we might have been able to draw from for an athletic fund or a building rental fund. And it's just, it's not there. At the same time, we are getting crunched by the state. I do not believe the municipal side has these mandates that we have. We just heard how the social studies curriculum's being changed. We need to add that into the textbook. We have a 3-year science program that was just adopted through the state, and ours is a model for other communities. We could buy some textbooks and just buy a Pearson product and be done with it, but our students aren't going to be learning at the same level that we here in Burlington are requiring and demanding and expecting of our students. So I think that the guideline conversation, yes, the levy, that is where it starts, but I think next year is where we can really start having that conversation. We have a budget that's been done, that we're seeing, that we're feeling the crunch with. Everything's noted, very well documented, seen. Ms. Creedon's been speaking about this. Our enrollment for ELL is going up. This is a school system that has been thriving because of our students, because of the curriculum, because of what we're expecting and we hold ourselves accountable to. And I think that levy discussion is going to be huge next year. I think we've tried in the past, it's always come back to the residents and what can we afford as residents. But I think that the school system, and we need to do a better job highlighting that there is, I believe, a big difference between the municipal budget and the school department budget and what is thrown in our laps that we need to adapt to. And it's not inexpensive to do it and to do it well. And our schools are in excellent shape. You look at how many people come through these schools, the different workshops and conferences that we host for around the state and sometimes nationally, as Patrick can tell you. And these schools are maintained with heavy, heavy traffic. We don't have that same traffic again in our municipal buildings, maybe the rec department, seniors, but I will argue that I'm sure our senior center is a lot kinder to the buildings than our students coming in and out from recess, which is huge to get them out on those days that it might be not pristine on the field. So I do think we need to have a bigger levy conversation. I think Ms. Creedon's been leading the charge. I think we also need to have a bigger discussion on, you know, we can't just say municipal needs this and school is the same. The town's been very supportive in that for the past couple of years. We have had a mixed guideline like that, and it's been appreciative. But I think through Nicole's effort, through the budgeting, and through what we've been seeing over the past year and a half, that we do need to have those conversations. I do not think there's anything wrong with going to town meeting and saying this is our custodial help, and as he said, you know, it gets amended. There's no shame in having something amended if that's what they feel, if that's what this board feels is important to bring forth, because bottom line is the discussion. So we're going to have the discussion on custodial help this year, and we're going to have that summer custodial help next year. So, you know, what happens at town meeting is anyone's guess, but at least that discussion has been heard and had. So, thank you.
If I could just
Yes.
comment
Talked
also.
at all to the town about trying to get a little more money on, just for this 125,000? Have you?
Not yet.
approached them at all yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
This
You're
just
figuring this out?
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
across tonight.
Okay. I mean, you can always withdraw it later if you can't. work the
Exactly,
deadline.
exactly.
I mean, I think it's, because of the deadline, right, you're really against it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you just got the information, so I think, it doesn't seem crazy to at least try and see if you feel appropriate a little more, or you can, consider, if you really need all 40 students done, you can think about that part too. It doesn't make any sense to pay overtime to your custodial help when you can hire students
Yeah.
at such a, I'm sure, much less rate, so that makes no sense at it's gotta be,
I think they're less
should
than
be able
minimum
to
wage,
work
right?
this out.
I,
Simon?
I'm, with approval from the second, I'd be inclined to withdraw my amendment.
I will withdraw the
You okay?
second also.
Okay, so, and I also wanted to add, I don't want to repeat what other people have said, and I think it's all been really valuable. But somewhat to add on to what Mrs. Russo was saying, I also feel like because we've had this 2-year transition with a lot of financial problems, that because we're still things are still settling out. I think that we've been concerned, we understand that there were financial problems, that last year we had a budget problem. This was not good, and we are not happy about that. And so we've been very cautious, I feel personally, and I think some other people on the committee, but personally I felt very cautious about asking for more money and, that kind of thing. But I also feel like people should understand, for example, the difference between a school building that needs to be cleaned carefully so thoroughly every year versus a town hall where people come in one at a time. Those kinds of differences, the state mandates that we get versus, there are state mandates for towns and cities, but the curriculum additions, and now we're kind of floating back and forth between these capital warrant articles and the operating budget. But we are absorbing additional expenses without asking for additional monies in many ways. And this, because it's settling out, we've discovered that we lost a tenant and we don't have that kind of money in the building rental account. And so asking for additional money could be reasonable, but it's worrisome to ask for it because we know that the town is looking very carefully at our finances and how are we spending our money and why didn't we budget for it, and and I think we all know there are all these reasons. But I just wanted to state that because it is hard to say we want to ask for more money when we know that it's we're under a big microscope, and I understand why. But I also feel like we're representing the schools and the students and our staff, and that we also need to represent what the schools need as well. So.
All right, I guess my motion's back on the floor.
Can you repeat it,
And
please?
so is my second.
My motion was that the committee approve the submission of what I called warrant article 20-17, and I'll renumber the last one, as Mr. Murphy suggested, for summer custodial help in the amount of $125,000.
And I seconded it.
Seconded it.
I seconded it.
Any further discussion? All
Past
right.
tense, that's
Seeing
what I
none,
did.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, passes 5-0-0.
Madam
Well,
Chairman,
what do
I-
you know?
I
Good for the
move-
good guys.
Well,
We'll see.
well, yeah,
Madam
At least we
Chair,
got it through this committee.
I move that the committee approve the submission of what we'll call warrant article 20-18, if that's all right with Ms. Kuna? Already did it? Okay. For community
Reflect the changes, huh?
custodial services in the amount of $44,753. Do we need the 10 cents, Bob? All right, 10 cents.
Gotta have the 10 cents.
Second.
okay, it's been moved in second. Any further?
Questions? So I'm curious, is this non-capital warrant article part of our 1.4 million?
No,
No.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
just one quick
Okay,
question.
yes.
Bob, do you have sometimes we'll get a little, probably you're not, was it in our backup, all the groups that use it? I didn't notice it.
Yes, so
Did you add anybody this year?
the only changes are the average salaries of our custodial employees has not been adjusted to reflect the contract and the employees that have either retired or switched positions. So that is reflected in the current change this year.
Okay,
We have not added hours or groups.
all right, thank you.
All right, so seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 5-0-0. I believe that would be it for the warrant articles.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to end with two things. One is just information that I committed to get out after the Ways and Means meeting last night. So at your desks, I was just doing some look at the elementary schools and classrooms and ratios. I believe I left it at the Ways and Means table as well. And so, and again, the highlights don't have any meaning other than I was just, some things were standing out to me, that's what I did. But what we were looking for, again, we still have to reduce our operating budget, so we were looking for positions that we could maybe look to reduce. And so there were some changes that we were looking at. This is moving sort of each grade up to, it was basically just a cohort analysis. So this year's K moved up to 1 moved up to 2, you know, as we move forward. The incoming K is the number that we, is the least predictable. And again, we've had a kindergarten introduction night. We've also been out to every school to try to get families to register their kindergarten students. They don't have to pre-register, so we look at trends as well. So again, Francis Wyman in particular always has a large number of students register for kindergarten during the summertime. And again, I think the committee has always really looked for us at the elementary school to be on average about 18 to 1. District-wide, again, we're right around there. Again, some of the changes is Francis Wyman has a bulge year, which is in second grade now at 6 sections, and they'll be moving up to grade 3. In order for me to keep the same number of elementary teachers, we have to reduce those number of teachers to back down to 5. So there's going to be a bump up in class size in grade 3. Fox Hill had a 5th grade. You can see the 6th grade number was 50. We only had 3 Fox Hill 5th grades this year because it was a very small 5th grade class. We're going to need 4 5th grade, so actually Fox Hill is going to be up in terms of a teaching position. You can see they go from 24 to 25. Francis Wyman goes from 31 to 30. Memorial stays the same at 4 sections each. And then Pine Glen is keeping 17. One of the things we were looking at is reducing their kindergarten sections from 3 to 2, but the challenge is there we have lots of our DSC students who are coming up to Pine Glen, and they'll be integrated into the classroom. So their numbers are, again, a little bit different. And also, if they have any summer registrations, then having 2 sections of K, there's some issues with having so few sections because we can't spread the kids out. So if you get 5 kids registering, which doesn't seem like a lot, at Francis Wyman, we can put 1 kid in each section because we have 5 sections. But at Pine Glen, if you only have 2 kindergartens, you can drastically impact the site. You just have fewer sections to distribute the kids over. So again, I'm trying to keep 3 sections of K at Pine Glen. So ultimately, this exercise, I was looking at, can we possibly go from, for instance, from 96 elementary teachers, say, to 95, and that would save a salary or potentially give us a salary to incorporate some of the new positions that we're looking to do to help, again, reduce our overall budget ask. And again, when I'm looking at this, I'm saying I think we at least need to keep the same number of elementary teachers. That's the point of the exercise. And again, the unknowns here are if we have a large number of kindergartners register at Fox Hill, for instance, over the summer, that, again, I'm just sort of highlighting some areas is what I'm looking at. But we have a bulge grade, again, at Fox Hill, that 1st grade, because that's a 5th section. And again, if we're going to absorb those larger classes, we tend to want to do that, from my perspective, in grades 3, 4, and 5, or especially 4 and 5, not at K to 2 is where I would prioritize the lower class size. So.
Mrs. Bonko?
I'm trying to figure out how you get 0.25 of a kid.
It's bad math. We would have some classes of 17, some classes of 16, some classes of 15, so it's,
All right, so.
we don't dismember.
So let's get down to the bottom line. Francis Wyman, 3rd grade, you don't have enough teachers.
Well, again, we're making the reduction. So this year in second, there are 6 sections of grade 2 at Francis Wyman, so the 105 would be spread across 6 sections.
Do you expect to lose any of those kids?
No, not
Do you
at this time.
expect to gain some kids?
I don't know.
That's,
so.
the number's too high.
Okay.
Do you have a classroom for another class?
Probably not.
We could probably, well, there's a sixth second grade. I'd have to talk to Mrs. McDonald whether she could use that classroom for a 3rd grade.
It's a second grade classroom now?
Yes. There are 6 sections of grade 2 at Francis Wyman.
Right.
And again, so that's an elementary thing we can look into. All I'm saying is if we're adding that salary, then that's gonna impact our operating budget, and we're just gonna have to look at other places. So that's all I'm saying. But if you'd like me to consider an additional elementary teacher, again, I'm not gonna argue with that. I'm just saying I have to then,
Eric, remember when I told you to ask for 10% at the guideline
exactly.
meeting?
So, all I'm saying is at our public hearing, now that if we're moving from April 2nd to April 9th, at the public hearing in April 9th, we will, I'll make some considerations in reference to sort of elementary numbers. And as we talk about what we reduced and what we can fit in, we might have some choices to make. But, for instance, it might be between an elementary teacher and the high school adjustment counselor. I'm not saying that's what I would do, I'm just saying that might be one possibility of a trade that we would need to make to come down to the guideline that we're going to have. But I think I was asked last night in terms of elementary, sort of where we stand. And again, these are the numbers that we have. These are present enrollments and present registrations for kindergarten.
So if I was a parent who had maybe a 5th grader and a 3rd grader, or a 4th grader and a 3rd grader, and I saw the difference between a class of 16 and a class of 21, I wouldn't be real happy about it. I think 21's too big, and especially in 3rd grade, because the way I think of it, 1st grade, 3rd grade, it's a lot of new material in those particular grades. You know, 2nd is kind of an extension of 1st, but then 3rd is a whole new thing. And I think that, I go back to my other argument, we're not doing the right thing if we have 21 kids in a class.
And again, Mrs. Monaco, I would never argue with you on this point. All I'm saying is for the public hearing and the budget, we'll have some options. And again, if an additional elementary teacher would be the priority of the committee, then we can certainly build an option around that. And then we'll have to make some choices in terms of the new positions. Again, we had requests for 13 new positions, and we clearly can't do all 13, so, or 13.3 or whatever it was, but we're gonna have some choices, and again, I just wanted to, I was actually hoping to reduce the number of elementary staff. I don't think I can do that, and if we're going to add elementary staff, then we'll have to make some other decisions elsewhere.
Yeah, it is. And the 2nd grade at Pine Glen, that isn't a problem because the kids are only in there part of the time.
Yes, ma'am.
So we won't use the same argument on that.
Right.
Okay.
They're-
Ms. Simon?
Um,
Mr. Murphy?
I mean, I have concerns about the 21 in those classes, but I also have concerns about the equity between our buildings and some of these new positions that might have to not new, but some of the positions that we might not be able to do, and it's a trade-off, and I don't know, when, I'm happy to hear that you'll be presenting us with some various scenarios, because it's not, I mean, it goes back to, is there enough money to support this? So I'm concerned, but I do want to see what the various trade-offs mean.
Mr. Murphy?
Is it the intention, as you're whittling your way down here, and you've made some cuts already, at least mentally, we haven't formally been given many of them or all of them. Is that ultimate discussion, the intention to have that at our next meeting, which will now be on the 9th? Like, for instance, you're talking here, if you sense the will of the committee is to maintain the elementary staffing level as it is this year, so therefore, something else has to come out. When we get the final presentation coming into our next meeting, are we going to have, it's gonna be our recommendation with a number?
Yeah.
And will there then be, these are the next 5 things that I had to cut out to get there? My
Yes.
point is, when do we have this discussion as to?
We'll try to get it to you before the next meeting, as soon as we can, and Nicole's been doing a great job. As I write stuff out, she's actually putting it into a spreadsheet, which is an amazing skill. But I think she's keeping track of reductions, and so ultimately you'll get sort of the budget that we started at, and then what we've reduced to get down to where we are. There are some reductions that we can make in contracted and supplies and materials, but you all know the real reductions come in salary.
Right.
And we were about, what, I think our initial gap was about $1.4 million, so we're needing to reduce after contractual obligations. And again, you saw tonight, many of the schools came in at 0% in everything but salary. So there's not a whole lot for us to do, so you'll see the positions that we're prioritizing and sort of how we're getting down, and then our intention is to present you with a operating budget at 3.75 at a 3.75% increase.
Okay, well, maybe my question, I may be better phrased this way. That seems, I don't think there's a lot of time for us to digest it, and everybody has their own theory or
Yeah.
philosophy as to what. Ultimately, on the 2nd, we're voting a number, aren't we?
On the
Yes.
9th?
Not gonna meet
On the 9th, I'm
Yes.
sorry, on the 9th, we're voting a number.
Right.
The decision as to whether, within that money that is ultimately allotted, you choose to buy, is not the right word, but you choose to hire,
An adjustment
An
counselor
adjustment
versus an
counselor
elementary
versus-
teacher.
I mean, that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure, I think that's an internal decision ultimately made by you, that we don't necessarily have to have all of those discussions between now and April 9th, because I just don't think there's enough time to do that.
Right.
But I just kind of throw that out there, that before we get too hung up on what you're gonna do with it, I think we have to focus more on the number. And I think where the decision that we're ultimately going to have is, you're gonna come in with a recommendation at guidelines. What this school committee chooses to vote might be that number, or if there's a motion made to increase that by $70,000 to add another teacher or something, then that's ultimately our prerogative, because it's our budget, not your budget, right?
Correct.
Okay.
At that time.
Right.
Mr. Nelson.
Just a quick follow-up then, on what Tom was saying. It would be very helpful if we could have a breakdown of all of those positions, what each one would cost. So if we decided we wanted to add in 2 out of the 5 that you cut, we would know what the dollar figure was for those 2. Then we could make a motion on the floor to add a certain amount back into the budget.
And again, in the original budget document you have, Nicole built in all the requests and the costs associated with that, so go ahead.
There was a separate sheet that I distributed that had, just a 1-page that had them all listed out. But I can get that back out to you guys again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could you redistribute that?
Yes, so we'll,
Mine's pretty well.
Yeah,
Yes.
right,
Up.
a new one is good.
so we'll have, again, all the information, and Mr. Nelson, you will have the, sort of the itemized cost for those positions.
Mrs. Monco.
So Eric, if we have, at Francis Wyman, if we have, 5 or 6 more 3rd graders move in over the summer,
Yeah.
what would you do? You know, after the budget's all set and determined, and then we find out we get that problem, what would you do? You would go to,
The committee and ask for another elementary teacher, is what I would do.
and we would go to town meeting in September and ask for more money, right?
Which we've done before for kindergarten teachers.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not suggesting that, because I think that this number's too high, but I'm trying to make the point that this has happened before, and that one of the remedies has been to go back to town meeting and say, hey, guess what? We need another teacher. Sometimes it's been 2 or 3 more teachers. Our budget's a little tight.
And then, so, Madam Chair, again, for discussion, and you'll be getting more information from us again on the detail. And just the final thing I'd like to say is, Bob did go to the Selectmen's meeting Monday while we were having our Ways and Means Subcommittee meeting, and they voted unanimously to support the statement of interest for the high school renovation project. So I wanted to thank the Selectmen for their support. You know, in the process, they have to vote on very specific language that I believe they read into the minutes.
Correct.
And then our submission is due on April 12th. And so that'll be part of that submission moving forward. But again, want to thank them for their support of our 7th trial at our high school renovation project.
Mr. Murphy?
Just one more question on the warrant articles. Bob, how did things go with capital budget without any issues or?
No issues, long night.
Yeah.
A lot of articles, of course, a lot of discussion. I think overall it's very positive. Sorry, my microphone's not on. So like I said, I think that was very positive. I do know that there are probably 3 that I will have to make sure that I have some more reading and understanding for the questions that probably will show up at town meeting floor. So
Did they vote on it?
they did not vote on it.
They don't till the end.
Okay.
That's why there's no point in going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, is there anyone for public participation? Well, you could still, I don't know.
You guys want to,
Well, thank you, though, for all your input tonight. So we do have a need for executive session to discuss contract negotiation, approval of executive minutes, review of executive minutes, and Mass General Law C-30A, Section 21A, subsection 7, for the purpose of complying with any general or special law, specifically GLC 214, Section 1B, right to privacy, and GLC 12A, Section 9. Holding this in open session would have a detrimental effect on the position of the public body. School committee will only return public session for the purpose of adjournment. Is there a motion?
so moved.
Second.
It's been moved in second. Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mrs. Monko?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.